the surface properties.
Which is really what sets NISAR apart.
That is right.
Right. No other satellite's been able to penetrate all of that 24/7.
Right. And with the two frequencies, we actually can do two things. We can penetrate, but we also can see the biomass or the trees and vegetation. So we can see both of them. And by combining all that data, they are seeing the world in a whole different way.
Yes, in a whole different light. I love it. All right. Now, Jane on Facebook, getting to another social media question, asks, awesome information. What is the projected longevity of this satellite?
So we design it to last 5 years, but generally, when we build space systems, we build them to last. So we anticipate it could last 10 or longer years, but we plan for 5. We hope for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yes, for sure. And Logan on Facebook asks, does NISAR use solar panels for power?
Yes, we do.
We've got some pretty exciting activity going on behind us, Wendy.
Yeah, so you saw that Paul pointed out the instrument that just arrived back in that corner, but right here in front is kind of exciting. This is one of our test structures that we use to actually, right now, the people up there on the scaffolding, they're actually preparing to integrate that big dual frequency system into that system. And so they're getting up there, getting all ready to start integrating the hardware into that. They're making sure they have room for all the cables, and there's not going to be any hardware that will hit anything else. So this is a really important practice run that they're doing right now as you're witnessing it.
And so tell me a little bit about it. Now, a lot of people saw people in the clean room from Perseverance, and they had to wear a much heavier suited.
Oh, right. Yeah. So we have slightly more relaxed requirements. We are on a planetary mission, so we don't have to worry it's a term called planetary protection. We aren't going to harm our own planet. So we have less requirements. So right now, what we basically have to wear our clothes is just to protect the hardware from particles. We don't want particles to get on anything and put dust somewhere where we don't want it to be. So we have less requirements on that.
And this is pretty interesting because I've seen it actually horizontal, and now it's completely in the vertical. Is there a reason why you do that shift up and down?
Yeah, so we have this fixture that is used to rotate horizontal and vertical. Some things we need to do in the horizontal configuration. If you can see what we're doing over there with the actual flight system, that's all horizontal because we're going to be testing in that configuration. We're going to be radiating through our antenna, through this wall you might see in the background here. So there's a lot of activities that we do that are better suited for that configuration. But when it's time to install the big antenna that you're not going to see today because it's not here yet, but we have a very large antenna, and that's best to integrate in this vertical configuration. It's also much easier to install our the instruments in a vertical configuration because it's easier to deal with gravity effects in this vertical configuration. You don't have to worry about things not quite fitting right. So this is preferred for integrating our hardware, and then we can go back and go flat if we need to do some more testing. So it's flexible.
That's great. And you were talking about the reflector, which is the size of a 3-story building. So try to wrap your head around that. But we've got a model here that you're going to be able to show us exactly what they're trying to do behind us and then compare it to the model.
Right. So you got a good feel for what this portion of the structure looks like. You can see this is all the radar instrument. This is the feed here. But this up here, this is our big 36-foot antenna reflector. It has a 9-meter boom. It's got this very interesting reflector that's super lightweight. It's only a few hundred pounds and has to be folded up very small and compactly because it has to fit into a pretty small launch vehicle. So it has to compactly stow in this configuration, and then it folds itself around the structure so that on launch it's pretty small. It's not much bigger than this structure right here, but it becomes a very large antenna. The antenna itself is an interesting technology. It's called a mesh reflector, which is like pantyhose that you could wear on your feet. So it's super lightweight. Mm-hmm. And then we have a nice structure that makes it nice and stable so that it points just where we want it to point.
And tell me a little bit about the integration, Wendy, of the L-band and the S-band, because that's basically the next step for your project.
Right. So I'll walk a little bit back over here. So over the next month, we will stay in this exact configuration. First, they're testing the two systems by themselves, just like India did their testing in India, and we're finishing our testing at JPL. But in about 3 or 4 weeks from now, we're actually going to start physically and electrically integrating the two systems. That'll take about a month or so to fully test the two systems together, make sure that they work together, that they operate synchronously with each other. And then we will then take, then it's when we take that structure, bring it over here and use this big one that we were just looking at before turn it vertical, and that's when we start working on integrating that big antenna into it. And then after that, we go through a whole bunch of environmental tests with thermal, and dynamics, vibration to make sure we can survive the launch, and then we ship it back to India.
And it will be launching from India.
It will be. So in India, there's still a lot of work to go. We have to marry this with that spacecraft. We talked about the solar panels, so there's a lot of hardware at India that's still getting put together. So this instrument will go back to India, integrate it with the spacecraft, and then we will launch it.
Now, when you found out that you were going to be working on NISAR, what were you the most excited about?
Well, I've worked on a lot of radars, with Paul for that matter, so I've done a lot of radars. This is probably the most sophisticated radar I've ever worked on. It's one of these radars, an L-band system, is very complicated and sophisticated, and we're building 2 of them, so that alone is very exciting. And I have to say that the Indian collaboration has been very exciting for me. I had never actually left the U.S. before I started on this project, so my first trip out of the country was to India, so I thought that was really exciting too.
And that's amazing. You had mentioned the collaboration, and that time change must be a little brutal.
It is. In some ways, it's great. We are working 24/7, right?
Yes.
We always are. We're 12 hours apart. So when it's our morning, it's their nighttime. So we're just working around the clock together.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Wendy, for breaking down all the components here. And as we continue to prepare, just make sure that you stay tuned and you follow us on all our social platforms at NASA JPL, also at NASA Earth. And as I mentioned before, we have a great new article that we can link in the comments box that will actually give you a much more in-depth look at the mission. But I'm going to let you take a sneak peek behind me because this is pretty amazing what's going on right now. We've got a lot of action in the clean room here at the Space Assembly Facility, and it is just amazing to be able to see all of this coming together. The parts just came from India about 2 days ago, as Wendy mentioned, and now they are slowly but surely continuing to work on the satellite here at JPL until it is ready to be sent for that final integration in India, where it will launch from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota, India. And to get the very latest on that mission, as I mentioned, follow us here at NASA JPL as well as at NASA Earth for the very latest information. And from our home to yours at NASA Earth, your home is our mission. Thank you so much for watching.
Wherever, however, whenever. We're here, there. We're everywhere. NASA Space Communications and Navigation. Exploration enabled.
Hi, everybody. I'm Soledad O'Brien. I welcome you all to Hispanic Heritage, El Ayer y El Mañana, yesterday and tomorrow. You might know me from my work in journalism and television, but one thing you might not know is my connection to this wonderful month-long celebration of the Latino community. My mom, who passed away a few years back, immigrated from Cuba as a teenager, eager to get an education in this country and also hoping for a country that would guarantee her more freedoms. In 1968, California Congressman George E. Brown pushed to recognize the contributions of the Latino community, and Congress passed Public Law 90-48, officially authorizing and requesting the president to issue annual proclamations declaring September 15th and 16th to mark the beginning of what was then called National Hispanic Heritage Week. Today, we're celebrating that special period of the year when the U.S. recognizes a community that is hardly a minority anymore. We are 60.6 million strong, a record 18.5% of the total population. and growing quickly. Our music, our art, our language, our food have all had a profound influence on American culture. We've even been heard in the voting booth. Our program today will focus on the creation of the Latino Museum, another congressional recognition of the accomplishments of our community. We will also have a conversation about what the future could hold for two leading agencies, the Smithsonian Institution, which is now leading the planning and the development of the museum, and NASA, the global leader in space exploration, science, and research. It is a measure of how far the Latino community has come since that day when Congress initiated the celebration that two such august institutions are at the forefront of our discussion. Joining me is Dr. Ellen Stofan, the Undersecretary for Science and Research at the Smithsonian. She oversees its science research centers, as well as the National Museum of Natural History and the National Zoo. Her focus is the Smithsonian's collective scientific initiatives, especially biodiversity, global health, climate change, species conservation, astrophysics, and the search for life outside the Earth's solar system. Before joining the Smithsonian, Dr. Stofan had 25 years experience in space-related organizations and a deep research background in planetary geology. It's so nice to see you, Dr. Stofan. Thanks for talking with me.
Oh, thank you for having me here today.
Of course, my pleasure. Let's first and foremost talk about the National Museum of the American Latino. That legislation to create that museum was passed just this last December. Can you give us an update on where this stands and what are some of the milestones that have been set for making progress along the path to getting it actually created?
We are so excited about the creation of this new museum, along with the American Women's History Museum. To have the challenge of doing two new museums at the same time is obviously a big challenge, but this is so, as we're going to be talking about today, this is just so incredibly important. And the exciting news is we've actually made a fair amount of progress. We have a search firm on board. We're searching for the director, Eduardo Diaz, who is head of our Smithsonian Latino Center, is the acting director while we search for a permanent director. We've appointed a 19-member board and will continue to appoint members to that board, advisory board for the museum to help them think about what is this museum? What is it going to do? How is it going to tell this amazing and complex story of the Latino experience in this country? So we are incredibly excited between the board, the search for the director, and of course there's that very small issue. Where are we actually going to put this museum? And so we have a site selection process that's going on for both of the new museums. That process is obviously a complicated one. You have to really say where on the National Mall or near the National Mall do we have the space to put two new museums? And so it's really that site selection that is the first really important step way before you ever get to the actual design of the museum. And so again, those things are all underway, really exciting.
So you think that Latinos could have a place, a presence on the National Mall one day soon-ish?
Yes, definitely. And, you know, obviously, as our Secretary Lonnie Bunch knows, going from having the congressional legislation to actually getting the museum built on the mall can be a long process. But we're really hoping that this process moves along. And that's why we've taken these steps of actually getting all the leadership in place, because frankly, that is part of the critical step. For those people who don't know, the Smithsonian is actually part federally funded and part privately funded. So about 60% of our funding comes from the federal government, and the federal government usually pays for the construction of museums. But everything that goes inside the museum, all the galleries, you know, bringing in the artifacts, designing the museum, that is actually paid for from private funds that we get through fundraising. And so frankly, that's going to be for both of these new museums, that's going to be a big role of the board, is saying, how do we put together a fundraising campaign to help raise funds for these museums while we go through the federal process? Again, first of all, we have to have this site selection, we'll have to design the museums, and then go through the process of building it. So while it's certainly not going to happen in the next year or two, it is going to happen, and we're really excited about it. And I will say, to give us a preview of how exciting this is going to be, in May of 2022, the Molina Family Gallery will open at the National Museum of American History on the Mall. And that will actually be the first Latino-focused gallery on the National Mall at the Smithsonian. And so that'll at least give us a preview of the kinds of stories, the kinds of things we want to talk about in really saying, you know, how have Latinos helped shape this country? What has been their experience in this country? All these stories that are so critical to tell.
The collaboration between NASA and the Smithsonian is quite deep. Can you talk a little bit about that history?
Yeah, you know, it dates amazingly all the way back to the 1960s. In fact, I think the first agreement was signed back in 1967, where NASA said that all of the significant artifacts from air and space would be, as soon as they were done using them, you know, for technical purposes, they would go to the Smithsonian to be kept in perpetuity. And this is so incredibly important because obviously this is such a story of innovation, of you know, amazing feats done by teams, done by individuals, that the fact that NASA really made this agreement very early on with the Smithsonian means we have all these artifacts to help us tell the story. And of course, it started, and the dominant part of the National Air and Space Museum's collection is the Apollo collection. So all of the Apollo artifacts, down to really old containers of pineapple that the astronauts took to the moon, everything went to the Air and Space Museum. So when you see artifacts around the world from Apollo, they're on loan from the Smithsonian, because obviously we wanted to get that story out, not just across the country, but around the world. We also hold one of my favorite things at the Air and Space Museum, which is the Apollo art collection. During Apollo, NASA commissioned all the leading artists of the day to be documenting Apollo from an artistic point of view. And I really love that because I love this intersection between science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. And those two are really critically important. So we have a Rauschenberg, we have like 5 Norman Rockwells, we have an Alma Thomas, that's my absolute favorite. So the fact that the Smithsonian can help tell that Apollo story is because we have these artifacts. And now this relationship continues to today. But NASA now gives the Smithsonian sort of first right of refusal of the artifacts and then does give them to other museums around the country. It's not as exclusive as it used to be, but that's okay because seriously, we actually run out of room to store things at the Smithsonian.
I've had the opportunity to interview many NASA scientists over the years on my journalistic programs, and it's always been fascinating. But what becomes very clear very quickly is that NASA has this massive portfolio, right? From the home planet to biodiversity to human impact to international space and moonlet, right? I mean, the list kind of goes on and on and on. How do you think you're going to be able to capture all of that and then represent some of that in the National Museum of the American Latino? What's that intersection look like?
Well, when you think about a museum, you know, really what you're doing is telling stories, you know, again, stories of individuals who made a difference, stories of teams that made a difference. And obviously that story of NASA, you know, if you're going to do a story about Perseverance rover, of course you want to, that's on Mars right now, you want to talk about Diana Trujillo, who is a Latino woman who's doing amazing things as part of the engineering team on Perseverance. And so to me, it always comes back to the story. What's the story? Because you might have an artifact, but you really want to know who is the person that built that? Who's the person that operated it? You know, what struggles did they go through personally to achieve these amazing things? And the story of this country is the story of American Latinos. They've, as everyone knows, contributed huge amounts, been there every step of the way. You know, it took 400,000 people to accomplish Apollo. And so the job of the new museum is going to be to collect all those inspiring stories, some of them not wonderful stories, a lot of them stories of hardship, stories of struggle, stories of prejudice, and other stories are stories of perseverance and triumph and huge contributions to the history of this country. And so for the new director and the curators of that museum, frankly, it's going to be an embarrassment of riches because there are so many stories out there, and which story do you choose and which artifacts do you choose? And what is the narrative of the museum going to be? And that's going to be what we're going to be working on as we go through the longer process of actually getting the museum built, is what are the stories? And, you know, so many of those stories at NASA, you know, whether it's Ellen Ochoa, who flew obviously on the space shuttle and then went on to become head of Johnson Space Center, or whether it's somebody we're going to be talking to later here today, Marla from the NASA Glenn Research Center. You know, the Latino story is the NASA story, and that, you know, we want that museum to definitely tell that.
An embarrassment of riches is always a very good problem for someone who's curating a museum to have. Dr. Stoffen, I'm going to have you stand by for a moment. We're going to continue our conversation in just a few moments. I wanted to hear about the great work that is going on, in fact, at NASA's Glenn Research Center and Langley Research Center, leaders, of course, in aeronautics and aviation. So let's welcome the Glenn Research Center Director, Dr. Marla Perez Davis.
Over our 80 years of operations, NASA Glenn has made many contributions to space and aeronautics, from ground testing, materials development, and research perspective. In that time, we have helped NASA explore the solar system. We have made aircraft cleaner, quieter, and safer, and our technologies have changed lives here on Earth. Initially established in 1941 as an aircraft engine research laboratory, NASA Glenn now contributes to a variety of NASA and commercial aerospace missions through our expertise in aircraft and space technology. Glenn is helping the United States send the first woman and the first person of color to the moon. Our world-class test facilities and unrivaled expertise in power, propulsion, and advanced materials are crucial to advancing Artemis. Glenn is conducting revolutionary aeronautics research in green technologies like electric aircraft propulsion and advanced materials and alternative fuels for sustainable aviation, while also exploring next-generation supersonic and hypersonic aircraft. Our Neil A. Armstrong Test Facility in Sandusky is home to the world's largest and most powerful space environment simulation chambers, and it has been instrumental in preparing the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis 1 mission later this year. NASA Glenn is advancing human spaceflight through our leading roles in power and propulsion communication technologies, advanced materials, and through our world-class test facilities. Our center played a critical role in the development and testing of the Orion spacecraft for Artemis 1. And we will look on with pride at its flight around the moon and back to prove the systems and technologies needed to safely launch astronauts on Artemis 2 in the coming years. We are finalizing the design of the power and propulsion element for our lunar gateway. Once integrated and launched with the habitation and logistic output, it will form the cornerstone of our exploration architecture around the moon. And its innovative high-power propulsion system will provide more access to lunar surface while demonstrating those technologies for future human exploration of Mars. NASA Glenn will continue to meet future surface exploration needs by advancing a broad portfolio of cutting-edge power generation and distribution systems, including radioisotope, fission, and solar, that will work together to ensure future missions have the plentiful, reliable power required to be successful. NASA's vision of flight looks very different from today's world, and we believe we are at the right place at the right time, and we foresee a future commercial aviation renaissance unlike any other. We see electrified propulsion as one of the key drivers of changing the way we travel, making future aircraft cleaner, more efficient, and more cost-effective. We are tackling the challenges of electric propulsion for small to large aircraft. Our focus is on the development of all electric propulsion systems and components, from batteries to megawatt scale system. And we are partnering with industry on future large-scale hybrid electric concept to meet NASA's requirements on carbon, fuel burn, emissions, and noise. We are rallying emerging markets to tackle the challenges of creating an air transportation system for urban and underserved areas that is all electric, autonomous, efficient, and safe for moving passengers and packages. At Glenn, we are studying how electric systems can be optimized, and we are supporting engine and power technology development. We're also working to understand and mitigate the vehicle's acoustics to help limit noise issues. And we are developing secure data links and real-time communications to safely integrate these aircraft in the national airspace. We are building an experimental airplane called the X-59. It flies at supersonic speeds, but makes a quiet thump instead of a loud sonic boom. We will fly it to provide data to enable regulation changes to allow overland commercial supersonic flight. This project is the game changer for future transcontinental and intercontinental transportation concepts, and will provide an opportunity to generate economic and societal benefit in a globally linked world.
To talk a little bit more about the exciting work the Hispanic workforce is supporting at Langley Research Center is Engineering Project Manager Debbie Martinez.
Thanks, Soledad. The Convergent Aeronautics Solution, or CAS project, is helping NASA change the way airplanes fly and the aviation industry along with it. By providing innovative solutions to complex problems, CAS seeks to help all of NASA aeronautic research and the broader community to the benefit of the U.S. economy and our quality of life. As the CAS execution manager, I have worked with numerous talented and creative researchers, such as those on the STEREO team. STEREO stands for Scalable Traffic Management for Emergency Response Operations. We are here at Langley Certain Range. The STEREO team had flight tests here. They partnered with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection and the U.S. Forest Service, who flew aircrafts that help fight wildfires in coordination with our NASA drones, using the STEREO system to keep all parties informed. The increased communication and coordination from the ground units to the vehicles in the air helped make the battle against wildfires faster, safer, and more targeted. Let's take a look at other aeronautic programs that some of my Hispanic colleagues are supporting.
I work for the Advanced Air Transport Technology Project, and we're focused on exploring and developing technologies to improve energy efficiency and environmental compatibility for fixed-wing subsonic transport. What is that? Those are passengers and cargo aircrafts. These studies look at vehicle configurations that are 3 generations beyond what we currently are using. For that, we need to have mature technology solutions ready for the time frame of 2035 to 2045. Recently, at 14x22, we tested the common research model on the simplified high-lift configuration with active flow control. And active flow control is one of the technologies that we're trying to develop, where it manipulates the flow around a wing to make it more efficient. All these studies are super exciting because it will impact positively the way we travel in the future.
The facility you have behind me is the Cockpit Motion Facility, which is our premier world-class facility that consists of 3 high-fidelity, full-mission, human-in-the-loop flight simulators and 1 6 degree of freedom motion platform. My job here consists of leading a team of engineers and technicians on the planning and execution of operations, maintenance, and improvements of the flight simulators and the motion platform. Flight simulation is a safe and cost-effective way to train pilots and design aircrafts. It also allows us to develop new technologies to improve the decision-making of the pilot and also response to emergency situation in the cab. Flight simulation is definitely an important factor in keeping the commercial aviation safe for the flying public.
The Electrified Powertrain Flight Demonstration Project is part of NASA Aeronautics' focus to expand research on sustainable aviation through the development and test of green technologies for the next generation of aircraft. NASA and industry have conducted studies on electrified aircraft propulsion concepts, and the results indicate that there is significant reduction in energy use, emissions, which reduces our carbon footprint, as well as a reduction in direct operating costs, which will benefit both the public and airline operators. Through industry cost-sharing partnerships, the Electrified Powertrain Flight Demonstration Project is working to mature and flight test megawatt-class electrified powertrain systems, which are at the heart of electrified aircraft propulsion systems. This is a game changer. If we can actually introduce megawatt-class powertrain systems, we can change how aviation aircraft are designed in the future, with applications to turboprops, regional, as well as single-aisle aircraft.
New airspace operations are rapidly emerging involving multi-rotor vehicles. Small quadcopters and octocopters are being proposed for applications such as surveillance, photography, or even package delivery. The System-Wide Safety Project is developing tools that are critical to the safe integration of these vehicles into the national airspace system, which is particularly important for urban environments with a high population density. So the work that I'm involved with is developing flight dynamic simulations that can accurately predict the vehicle's trajectory, the vehicle's performance, and simulate different air traffic management scenarios. And so we complete different wind tunnel tests to assess the vehicle's aerodynamic behavior in a wide range of operating conditions. This ranges from hover all the way to forward flight. It's definitely an exciting time to be a part of NASA and shape the future of aviation.
Thanks for joining us at NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. Back to you, Soledad.
NASA is doing an incredible amount of work in Earth science, specifically with efforts to understand our Earth's atmosphere, crust, water, and life as a single connected system, and understanding the Earth system and its response to natural and human impact give us a better understanding of our continuously changing climate. These studies and insights are necessary to determine how to predict future changes of climate, weather, and natural hazards. So here to give us additional insight into these efforts is Earth Science Deputy Director, Ms. Sandra Kaufman.
Thank you so much, Soledad, for that introduction. NASA Earth Science conducts a very comprehensive program of breakthrough science research on climate science. We use our 23 space missions that we have in collecting all kinds of data. We have another 16 missions that we have under development that are going to be launched in the next several years. We also use the International Space Station. So with all of these missions and instruments aboard the space station, we measure aerosols in our atmosphere. We try to understand whether they come from natural sources or man-made sources. We also study the processes that regulate the abundance of ozone in the atmosphere. There is such thing as the ozone hole, and we measure it, and we can predict certain aspects of it. We study sea level rise. We only have one Earth, and we are helping to the best that we can in understanding it and measure what's happening. Earth Science has a very strong applied sciences program, and in that program, we not only do disaster response due to natural hazards, we also have a program on public health, helping predict illnesses such as malaria, chikungunya, in a lot of the countries in South America, Latin America, and Africa. That is a big problem. And we are trying to use our satellites, the measurements of temperature, the measurements of moisture, and try to predict the incidence of some of these illnesses. We also have a very strong agricultural program that is helping farmers out there in not just on scientific studies, but trying to understand, for example, soil loss, soil moisture, plant evapotranspiration, whether the soil is not in good condition, whether the soil is releasing carbon into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. And so all these aspects are the aspects that we work and help and study And of course, working with local communities, working with people in coastal areas with the sea level rise and helping anticipate aspects of resilience, community resilience and such. So last, I wanted to talk about our Surveyor program, an initiative that we have with the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. And we work in partnership with leading regional organizations worldwide to help developing countries use this information provided by our satellites. And empowering local communities all the way from West Africa, South Africa, the Himalaya region, Central America. And we are planning on opening up a new hub in Central America in the upcoming years. So all in all, you know, Earth Science is trying to contribute to the understanding of our planet, but also help with all kinds of aspects that benefits society in general. So thank you very much, and back to you, Soledad.
We just learned about the work being done here on Earth, so now let's take a look above. Another interesting and exciting research area that NASA works on is space food. Food is critical, of course, for mission success and the health and performance of the astronauts. Maintaining a healthy diet plays an important role, specifically socially and psychologically, which is important for long-duration missions in space. So how does NASA handle feeding its diverse crew members? Let's turn it over to Johnson Space Center.
Thanks, Soledad. My name is Gisela Munoz, and I'm a crew systems instructor in the Flight Operations Directorate. One of the lessons astronauts receive from our team is food preparation and equipment, which covers not only how to operate the galley hardware, but also what types of food they can expect to see when they're on orbit and how to prepare them. Space food is prepared and packaged differently than on Earth. A standard menu for astronauts will include rehydratable foods and beverages, thermostabilized foods that are packaged similar to military MREs, and natural form foods like nuts or cookies. If you're lucky, you'll get food from one of our international partners like Russian, European, Canadian, or Japanese space agencies. Astronauts also have access to fresh food like apples and oranges that are flown up on our commercial resupply vehicles. Eating and drinking in space is different than on Earth because of the lack of gravity. Since you're not able to pour drinks into a cup, beverages are packaged in a pouch and sucked out through a straw. For your food, you need to be careful as you eat because even small pieces of food don't normally fall off the table like they do on Earth, but they'll float away and hopefully not at one of your fellow crewmates. One popular Hispanic food used in space are tortillas. Tortillas are a staple food and native to Hispanic cuisine in Mexico, Central, and South America. Tortillas have been used on orbit for decades for crew meals as early as the beginning of the space shuttle program. Astronauts have gotten creative over the years with using tortillas to make pizzas, fajitas, breakfast burritos, and even a space cheeseburger. Tortillas are a great component to the standard menu because they don't create a lot of crumbs and have a longer shelf life than the standard breads we eat on the ground. Shelf life is important because astronaut meals are sent up to the International Space Station in advance. In addition to the standard menu, astronauts are provided a small sample of off-the-shelf foods they request to fly. Some recent requests have included Hispanic foods such as salsa sacera, bean dip with jalapenos, and tostada shells. Salsa sacera is a red sauce dip made from chili peppers, red peppers, onion, garlic, and tomatoes. Tostada shells are similar to tortillas but have a crunchy consistency. Avocados even made a recent trip up to the ISS aboard one of the resupply vehicles. It is important to incorporate this variety into everyday meals and take crew preferences into consideration. The acceptability of astronaut meals are a contributor to the positive psychological health and performance of the crew while they are in space. Gathering for meals with friends and family with good food is an important part of the Hispanic culture. Entire songs have been dedicated to the menu of Hispanic cuisine, such as El Menú. The opportunity to have the comforts of home cannot be understated. This will be equally important as we venture farther from home during the Artemis missions.
And it's back to our conversation with Dr. Stofan. So given this long-standing partnership between NASA and the Smithsonian, how do you see them working together on the Latino Museum? What would that actually sort of look like in practice?
Well, one of the things that NASA is constantly think about is how do we help inspire that next generation? And that's actually also the mission at the Air and Space Museum. And I know it's the mission for the whole Smithsonian is really thinking about how do we inspire the next generation to do more, to discover more, to invent more, to keep this great story of this country going. And so when I think of the Latino Museum and NASA working together, one of the things I really think about is first of all, going back to Marian Wright Edelman's quote, you can't be what you can't see. And so are we highlighting people like the astronaut Franklin Chang Diaz or Joe Acaba, who you're going to talk to, or Ellen Ochoa? Are we really telling those stories of people like Diana, of people like Marla, these amazing engineers, so that every kid who walks into that museum understands that people who look like them have been making incredible contributions all along? And I know that's really important to NASA, and I know it's really important to the Smithsonian, that piece about inspiration. And then, of course, it's always the programs. It's not just the artifacts, which are critically important, that help us tell the stories. It's not just who we're featuring, but what kind of programming, what kind of educational reach, so that certainly people who come to the museum are being inspired, but we're also creating digital outreach, using all those incredible skills that NASA has and the Smithsonian has together to really make sure we're not just reaching kids who can come to Washington, but that we're reaching kids all around this country and all around the world.
Currently, NASA is preparing for return to the moon, and there are a handful of Hispanic astronauts who are working to make that a reality. This means that they could be the very first Hispanic astronauts to ever set foot on the moon, which is amazing.
It really is amazing. And I'm old enough that I remember the first moon landing. And while it was certainly inspiring, and actually my dad worked at NASA at that time, it didn't make me think I'm going to go do that, because frankly, none of them looked like me. And this idea that those first crews that we send to the moon, the multiple crews we'll send there, and then the first humans that walk on Mars, they're going to look like all of us. And to me, again, it gets back to that inspiration. If we can do this, together, just think what kind of power we have. And to me, that is part of the inspiration of space exploration that I think has helped certainly bring this country together during Apollo. But I think, now as we really struggle with COVID, I think we need a little of that moonshot feeling of, what, if we put our minds to it, we can do anything. We can have humans walk on the moon.
I love the concept of storytelling as a way of both bringing people together, but also really making people recognize themselves. I mean, in this idea of including everybody's story in that bigger storytelling picture. Dr. Stofan, we're going to take a break in order to hear from the astronauts, Dr. Frank Rubio and Joe Acaba, who are going to tell us a little bit about what this means for them.
All right, Frank. So, here we are in Hispanic Heritage Month, and I think it's really important because it gives us that time to really reflect upon the contributions that the Hispanic community has contributed, not only to the space program, but to the U.S. As a whole. So it really just gives us an opportunity to reflect on all the work that we've done, the contributions that we have given, and really to celebrate that, and for us to remember our heritage and to take part and really focus our time on that.
Yeah, Joe, I agree. I think it's a really important thing that we celebrate, right? We as Americans, I think one of the great things for our nation is that we are made up of so many backgrounds and cultures. And I think acknowledging where we came from, for my kids, I want them to be really proud to be Latinos or Hispanic Americans. And despite the fact that, they're American to the core, I don't want them to forget where they came from, where we came from. And so as a nation, I think throughout the year, the fact that we're able to celebrate different cultural backgrounds, and diversity is just great, because I think more than anything, it acknowledges that as a country, we're made up of a whole lot of different backgrounds that came together and made this awesome thing named America. And I think together, those cultures and those backgrounds can accomplish and continue to accomplish amazing things.
So I think when we talk about, having whatever culture it may be, working at NASA, it's super important. I think everybody understands today that a diverse team makes for a better team. You get different perspectives, different ways of doing things. So that's super important. And being an astronaut, it is a visible occupation. Frank and I, we're just a couple of ordinary dudes from California, but we have a really cool job, and it's an important job, and it's very visible. And so, part of what we do is representing NASA, but then also representing who we are as people. And so I think from the NASA side, that's super important. But when we go out and, either when we give talks or when we go and do our missions, people are watching. When I was first selected as an astronaut, the Puerto Rican community, they just embraced me. They were proud. They reached out to me. And then as I flew on my shuttle flight and then future flights, that support just continued. And as I give talks and I talk to kids, they look at that and they go, dang, if Joe can do that, I can do that. And that's not belittling to me. It's just, I'm a regular person that, had a dream, and it happened to work out. So I think it's important for NASA, and I think it's important for the Latino community to see me and Frank and others that are doing this work, representing them and, trying to make them proud.
Yeah, Joe, that's an awesome way to put it. Like you said, we're just blessed to have this awesome job and to represent the NASA team, right? We represent thousands of people that just put in so much work and effort to make what we do happen. And I think people forget. Yeah, you look at my class, for instance, and we're an incredibly diverse class. But first and foremost, within our core, competence and capability are utmost, because ultimately we're trusting each other with our lives. And so when I look at Joe, it's awesome that he's Hispanic, right? And that I know that he's reaching a large portion of our society. But really, when I see Joe, I see an incredibly capable, competent astronaut, and that's who I want beside me. Not just because he's Latino, but also because, and really mostly because of who he is as an astronaut, as far as being capable, knowledgeable, and competent in what he does. And I think all of us take a lot of pride in that. When I think about the moon and going back to the moon, I honestly go back to being a kid mode, right? I personally don't care who it is. It's going to be hopefully one of my peers that's in the Corps now. And just thinking of my friends being up there, it just makes me excited. And not just because I'm an astronaut, but as a person, as an American, as a human being, I just think accomplishing great things brings us together because we're all excited about being able to point and say, wow, look what we're capable of doing when we put our efforts together and work hard and overcome obstacles and take challenges head on. So yeah, excitement, happiness, joy. I mean, it's hard not to smile when I think of going back there. I look forward to hopefully contributing as a NASA team to accomplishing something that, I think we can imagine it right now, but we can't even dream of how awesome having a community on the moon in a permanent or semi-permanent state is going to be like. It's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be hard, but I think it's going to make it even better. The fact that it is hard is going to make it even better for us to be able to accomplish those things.
Yeah, when I think about, all of us going back to the moon, and if I just had to say a few words, it would be, you know what, if we can do it, you can do it. And, that sounds very simple, but it takes a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work for us to go back to the moon. And I think it signifies that amount of work, that amount of dedication. So whatever the younger generation wants to do, just know that if we can do this, if we can get back to the moon, you can accomplish what you want to do. We're not working every day thinking about a legacy, but it is important for us to realize that people do look up to us as a role model. And, I feel proud that, we both are leaving a mark, to our country, to where we came from, and just the world in general. So I think, the most important thing is being a good person, and working really hard. You're not always going to be the best at any particular job, but you can work hard. You can make yourself proud. You can make your family proud. And I think that, when I start thinking about a legacy, I'm hoping that's what people will remember is, Joe was just this regular old dude, but, he worked hard. He was a good person, and, and I can be proud about that.
Right. We, as a Latino community, tend to bring a lot of joy and celebration to the picture. And I think nowadays, especially, our nation needs a little bit of joy. And so as we reflect and as we celebrate, trying to stay focused on, yes, we're in a hard period in our history right now, but we're going to overcome this. And we're going to look back and say, hey, we did it. We got past that. And now it's time to keep moving forward. And so let's celebrate, enjoy, take pride in who we are, and then keep moving forward. Adelante.
Back with Dr. Stofan. Washington, D.C. has a lot of museums, Why this one? What will make it different? Why would you say people have absolutely, positively have to go to this museum when it's finally built and completed?
When I think of all the Smithsonian's, and for example, you could argue we already have a Museum of American History. Why do we need a museum just about the Latino population? But when I look at our Museum of Native American Museum, when I look at the African American History and Culture Museum, those museums show the richness and the depth of the stories and the contributions that have made this country what it is. And I think to be able to highlight stories that, frankly, people just don't know. I mean, how many people know who Felix Carrera was? I mean, he was a Puerto Rican World War I fighter pilot hero. Every kid should know his name. And this museum will give us the opportunity to tell more stories, to talk about the contributions that Latinos have made to this country, but also to show the darker side. What have been the struggles? What have been the challenges? And I think that for those of us who really think about the rich, rich heritage that goes back hundreds of years in this country, those stories need to be told. They need to be more commonly understood. And it is the American story, and it's the Smithsonian's job to tell the American story. And the Latino Museum will give us more space, more room, more bandwidth to make sure that everybody's story gets told.
Many museums focus a lot on history, sort of ancient artifacts. It sounds like you're going to have to figure out how to toggle between the history, the historic story, but also the unfolding present as well.
Our Secretary Lonnie Bunch of the Smithsonian likes to talk about the fact that the role of the Smithsonian, and really the role of museums, is to help people understand the present in the context of the past and to help us chart a better future. And so when you think about that, we should be using history in all these museums to help us understand how we got to the place we are today, because hopefully that'll help us understand what's happening. It gives you a very different interpretation of what's happening right now if you really understand the path we walked to get here. And then when you think of that path, it helps you understand, how do we get to the future that we all have a role in creating? And I think sometimes a lot of us feel like the future is something that happens to us. It's not something that we have agency in. And to me, at the Smithsonian, we're telling the stories of the past. We're involving people in the excitement of what's happening now, but it's all with the idea of how can the public then use that information to help create the future that we all want.
NASA is obviously continuing its work on inspirational missions that capture the imagination of many. I know that currently the agency is exploring foreign worlds, looking to get humans back to the moon, as I mentioned, all while expanding our understanding of the planet. Through its work, the agency hopes to continue to inspire young people. You've mentioned that several times. I know that's a real piece of the mission, or the missions, is to make sure that young people are constantly inspired and of course spark an interest in science and research and exploration. So I thought it would be a good time to hear from the workforce at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida and Jet Propulsion Lab in California on some of the work that inspiring Hispanics are doing.
Happy Hispanic Heritage Month from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Liliana Villarreal, Operations Flow Manager with the Exploration Ground Systems Program. I'm supporting our return to the moon through NASA's Artemis missions. I'm responsible for the overall management, planning, integration, and execution of operational ground and flight hardware activities required to support Orion and Space Launch System human spaceflight missions. My responsibility is to help lead the team to ensure we successfully complete the ground processing tests and assembly in preparation for the Artemis 1 launch. I was born in Cartagena, Colombia, but consider Miami, Florida my hometown. I moved to Florida with my family when I was 10 years old. The fact that this is the foundation for going back to the moon and eventually going deeper into space is such an inspiration for me. To be part of the team that started that is a dream for an aerospace engineer like me. We are very fortunate in NASA to have a healthy and strong Hispanic workforce. Most of them are very much involved in mentoring and sharing their knowledge with the younger workforce, but a lot of us also do outreach with the public and most importantly to the K to 12th grade students. I think it's important to ensure people see that we do have Hispanics and other minorities working these amazing, complex, and exciting programs because we need to show everyone that a diverse team is a successful team. I am Artemis. We are Artemis. As we prepare to launch missions to the moon from Florida, get to know one of the team members behind the Mars 2020 mission from the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California.
Happy Hispanic Heritage Month from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory here in sunny California. My name is Elio Morillo, and I'm a test and operations engineer from Mars 2020. I've worked on the Perseverance rover, as well as the Ingenuity helicopter. Currently, I'm the engineering operations mechanisms lead. So my team and I make sure that the rover is healthy on the surface of Mars every single day, that it's roving, as well as collecting samples. These samples are going to be one day returned by our follow-on mission, the Mars Sample Return Mission, which is going to be in charge of taking these samples from Mars and bringing them back to Earth, something we've never done in history and we're very excited about. One of the reasons I came to JPL is because we live at the cutting edge of space exploration. And along with that, we have a very diverse workforce. I was born in Ecuador, grew up in Puerto Rico, lived in New York City for several years, went to school in Michigan, and came here to California. Here at JPL, I found an incredible supportive community of engineers and scientists, particularly through the employee resource group Amigos Unidos, where I've found my family away from home, my familia. Through Amigos Unidos, we've created a supportive network that serves a community both on campus and outside. I've been able to find mentors that have taught me leadership as well as technical proficiency. And through several outreach events, such as the open house, high school initiatives, the summer internship program, we continue to inspire the future generation of engineers and scientists to continue this legacy of space exploration. The great thing about NASA is that alongside the engineers and scientists, we have social media specialists, graphic designers, storytellers, business administrators, all different kinds of skills and levels of expertise that help us push all the many missions of NASA forward. It really does take a village. And now, let's hear from our friends and California neighbors at NASA Ames Research Center.
Hi, my name is Cesar Acosta. I've been working here at NASA Ames Research Center for the past 27 years. 20 of those being right here at the ArcJet facility. Here at the ArcJets, what we do is we do heat shield testing. We test material for entry into an atmosphere, making sure that that material that goes on board a spacecraft is safe. The Hispanic team members that we have here at the ArcJet facility consist of test engineers, technicians, electricians, and data acquisition. I've seen that grow in the past 20 years. It makes me proud to see a bigger Hispanic community here. And as a Hispanic, it gives me great pride to be working here at the ArcJets and just being part of this team.
Dr. Stofan, it all sounds very, very exciting. How do you advise people to keep up with all that's unfolding as we're on this path to creating the museum?
Well, a couple of different ways. First of all is, of course, come to our website, si.edu, which will let you know what's happening with the museum. So when we appoint new board members, that some of whom are pretty famous people that you've heard of, like Eva Longoria or Jose Andres. So I urge people to keep up with who's being appointed to the board. I would also say that you'll be able to see the progress on when we appoint the director later this year, as we go through that site selection process. And of course, as we think about how do we get everybody in the country involved in terms of thinking about the stories this museum is going to tell and the role that it's going to play. So I urge everyone to keep an eye on this, come to our website. And of course, again, one more time, in May of 2022, please come to the Museum of American History on the Mall and come visit the Molina Family Gallery. Soledad, of course, you're on the board also of the new Latino Museum. How do you feel about being part of this great adventure?
Sort of like, it seems kind of overwhelming, and talking to you about it makes it seem even more overwhelming. I'm incredibly honored, obviously, and very excited, but already you think like, well, what is the story of the American Latino? Is it my mom's story? Came to this country as an Afro-Latina from Cuba. Is it the story of Americans who are of Mexican descent, whose families have been here for generations and generations and generations? There are so many interesting stories to tell that as a journalist, we never even scrape the surface of. So I'm just absolutely thrilled. I'm very, very honored. Thank you for asking me that.
Thank you.
A big thank you to Dr. Ellen Stofin for a great conversation. And I have to say, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to in this new museum is to see so many Americans exposed to the story of our community. We've had an incredible impact on this country, and our ancestors, whether they were our parents or our great-great-grandparents, have been refreshing our country's culture for 500 plus years. Our stories are America's stories. This museum and conversations like the one we just had underscore just how much we have infused American culture with the very best of us. And I think it's also an opportunity to correct some of the mistakes made long before my mom arrived in this country from Cuba. And for many years, a lack of recognition, a lack of inclusion. Our community has been a great part of the American story and society and culture, the arts, schools, government, corporate America. Only 2%, or 10 Fortune 500 CEOs are of Hispanic descent. Only 3% of full-time college professors are Hispanic. Latinos account for just 6% of judges on courts of appeals, 7% of judges on district courts, though everybody's very proud to have Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. There are just 26 Hispanic members of Congress, but passing this legislation to create the National Museum of the American Latino is just the beginning. Now the real work begins. I'm happy to see some of you in this room leading the change. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And a very special thank you to the Hispanic Outreach and Leadership Alliance, HOLA, at NASA headquarters for this opportunity, and to everyone across NASA who participated in today's program. Thank you all for watching. And now let's hear a few words from HOLA's leadership.
Gracias, Soledad. What a joy and honor to have you as our host for today's program. On behalf of the Hispanic Outreach and Leadership Alliance here at NASA headquarters from beautiful Washington, D.C., we'd like to thank you and Dr. Ellen Stofin for leading such a great conversation about the creation of the Museum of the American Latino. Latino Americans have touched many aspects of our daily lives, and we're excited to hear the stories that will be told through it.
Here at HOLA, we work hard to foster awareness and promote the contributions that our community has done here at NASA. So we're looking forward to increase that representation, involvement in our science, technology, engineering, and space exploration.
We would like to thank the NASA employee resource groups across the agency who participated in this year's program: Ames Research Center, Glenn Research Center, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Johnson Space Center, Kennedy Space Center, and Langley Research Center. Thank you also to NASA leadership for supporting employee resource groups like OLA, and for embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now, let's hear from our NASA Administrator, Senator Bill Nelson.
This program marked an opportunity to celebrate and reflect on the contributions and impact of Hispanics throughout our community, our country, beyond. Thank you to Soledad O'Brien, Ellen Stofan, and all our NASA guests for contributing to this meaningful conversation. And as we heard in the program, Congress passed legislation to build a national museum of the American Latino in December 2020. What a historic moment. I look forward to seeing the development of this future museum and ensuring the full NASA story and the Latino story, that it's captured and shared with the world. As NASA continues studying our home planet, exploring our solar system, and way beyond, and preparing to go back to the moon and then on to Mars, it will take all of us working together to be successful. NASA is committed to a culture of diversity, equality, and unity. Thank you again for joining us in celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. And a special thank you to the Hispanic Outreach and Leadership Alliance at NASA headquarters, and to the Hispanic employee resource groups all across NASA centers. Onward and upward.
Live from Laurel, Maryland, this is NASA's coverage of the Double Asteroid Redirection Test's planned impact with asteroid Dimorphos.
In a galaxy where asteroids have pummeled planets for billions of years, now one planet strikes back. For the first time in our planet's history, NASA will test an asteroid deflection technique. It's the first planetary defense method of its kind. NASA's Double Asteroid Redirection Test will intentionally ram itself into an asteroid and alter its orbit forever. At the crossroads of science fiction and reality, DART is part of our plan to defend planet Earth against potential future impacts. The test to protect the future of our planet takes place today.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, home to the DART Mission Operations Center. I'm your host, Tahira Allen with NASA Communications, and tonight we're following the real-time journey of the DART spacecraft and its planned collision with asteroid Dimorphos. The Double Asteroid Redirection Test, also known as DART, is the world's first planetary defense test mission of its kind. At 7:14 p.m. Eastern, it will demonstrate an asteroid deflection technique known as kinetic impact. Rest assured, this is only a test. The asteroid DART intends to impact is not a threat to Earth now, nor will it be after the collision. We have live views of the action from space, so keep an eye on the DART cam in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Right now, you're only seeing a black screen with a single point of light. That point contains two asteroids in it, Didymos with a smaller asteroid named Dimorphos orbiting around it. As long as we continue to receive these live views from DART, we're going to keep that feed up on your screen. As we get closer to impact, the asteroid will begin to take shape, and eventually Dimorphos will fill your entire screen. You'll also notice a countdown clock indicating how close we are to impact and a progress bar that'll check off key milestones along the way. Now, as we follow pre-impact operations, we invite you to join us as we check in with Mission Control for live updates and track DART's final milestones. We'll see two astronauts demonstrate what kinetic impact looks like in space, and we'll go behind the scenes at one of the observatories following DART's impact from Earth. You can participate in today's show tonight by submitting questions for our experts to answer live on air. Drop them into the stream wherever you're watching, or use the hashtag #PlanetaryDefender on social media. Now, we're a little over 70 minutes out from impact at 7:14 p.m. Let's now meet your co-host, Samson Rainey, joining us live from the Mission Operations Center. Samson, it's good to see you. How does it feel to be in the middle of the action tonight?
Hey, Tahira, I am feeling great. It is awesome to be back here after co-hosting DART's launch just 10 short months ago. How's the energy over there?
Wow, that's amazing, Samson. You know, everybody's super excited. I've been talking to some scientists and engineers before the show, and it's really just anticipation about what's going to happen tonight. So with that, could you give us an update on how things are going with mission operations?
I'm glad you're enjoying it there. This is going to be fun. So I mentioned launch, right? It was a huge event. NASA launches have become a staple of life for space aficionados. But there's never been anything like what we're about to see tonight, an attempt to impact an asteroid in near real time, the first attempt to change the motion of a celestial body. Just wow. If we hit that asteroid, Tahira, I think we're going to see a whole new side of this team that we've never seen before. Because let me tell you, since launch, these engineers and scientists have been eating, sleeping, and breathing this mission. This center has been like a second home for them as they've been monitoring the spacecraft's health and managing everything from propulsion to the power supply, guidance, and navigation. The list goes on and on. They've run countless simulations and have rehearsed for this moment time and time again, preparing for anything, and I mean anything that could possibly happen. A quick recap of the last 24 hours. No surprise here, they've been busy. Last night, they performed the sixth and last of what are called trajectory correction maneuvers to aim DART to within 200 meters of Didymos. Then they worked straight through to this morning to make sure that all went smoothly. Then they soldiered on to get us ready for tonight. And here we are, about an hour and 10 minutes from impact, and we're now in what's called the terminal phase, meaning that SmartNav, the autonomous navigation system, is actively guiding the spacecraft as it was designed to do for its final 4 hours. I also received word minutes ago that DART has reached another critical milestone. Draco, the eyes of SmartNav, is able to detect Dimorphos. This is a major goalpost, I have to remind you, because up until now, Draco has only been able to detect Didymos, the much larger asteroid it orbits. The next major milestone we're waiting for is for SmartNav to be locked on or targeting Dimorphos. We'll get more into what that means later. Lots more to come as we draw closer to impact. Back to you, Tahira.
All right. Thank you, Samson. It feels good to know that we are detecting Dimorphos. Now, before we get any closer to impact, let's get to know our spacecraft and its mission. After a beautiful launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base on November 24, 2021, DART has traveled over 400 million miles. And now, in just over an hour, we'll witness the spacecraft collide with asteroid Dimorphos in an attempt to change its orbit forever. The DART spacecraft is about the size of a vending machine and uses hydrazine thrusters for propulsion and roll-out solar arrays for power. It's traveling at about 14,000 miles per hour and will complete the last 4 miles of its journey in just 1 second. DART is on a collision course with asteroid Dimorphos, which is about the height of the Washington Monument and, more importantly, poses no threat to Earth. Dimorphos sits within a double asteroid system and is the smaller moonlet asteroid orbiting its larger companion Didymos. DART has just one instrument on board, and that's a Draco camera, which is feeding images to its autonomous navigation system, steering it straight into the asteroid. Now, teams from around the world have worked hard to get us to this moment. Samson is standing by with NASA's head of science and Johns Hopkins APL's head of space exploration. Let's check in to hear more about the journey.
Thanks, Tahira. To help give us some insight into what it takes to imagine, much less attempt, a mission this ambitious, I have with me Thomas Serbukin, Associate Administrator for NASA's Science Mission Directorate, and Bobby Braun, Space Exploration Sector Head at Johns Hopkins APL. Thanks. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thomas, I'll start with you. The mission, this team has been through an intense journey, years in the making, and they're now on the cusp of doing the seemingly impossible, impacting a tiny asteroid 7 million miles away from Earth with a spacecraft traveling 14,000 miles per hour. Why is it important for us to continue to push the boundaries of what's possible in space?
You know, what I always think is the world is made out of a box. Those are things we know, we can use, and a large space of things that are unknown. In that large space are solutions for problems of the future. There's new research, new understanding of nature. And we at NASA, we're all about moving that boundary back, moving it back to make more things useful for us, like DART, but also understanding nature in a new fashion.
It's incredible, Thomas. Well, based on what we know tonight heading into this main event, you know, what are you thinking about our chances of impact?
Wow, I'm betting on the team. Betting on the team is always the right thing to do when it comes to NASA missions, whether it's this one or other teams we've had. The thing you just announced, you know, that kind of seeing that little bump there in the image of that new kind of celestial body we knew was there, but now we've have it on the camera. It's just a step in that direction. I'm very optimistic.
That's awesome. What the team has planned for months, years ago is coming to fruition, and we're watching it live.
Absolutely. It's just exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. Bobby, you've been through so many white-knuckle experiences with space missions, most recently with the landing of the Mars Perseverance rover just last year. What is the mindset of the team coming to such a major moment in their career with the stakes being so high?
Well, teams like this prepare for the worst, but celebrate the best. And I think we're going to have one of those best nights tonight. There are, of course, many things that could go wrong in spaceflight, but so far this team's been on top of every possible problem. They've been ahead of it, and they just need to focus and push through and go for success.
That's awesome. I think from what we're hearing, the cheers coming out of the mock before this broadcast, I feel like we're on the right track.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Any pep talk or advice for the team heading into tonight that you gave them?
Well, I've been in the mock several times today talking with the team. They're calm, they're cool, they're collected. I basically told them just follow the data, trust in each other, trust in themselves. You know, they've prepared for this moment for years, and so they know this better than anybody. And as a team, they're going to get through this successfully.
is awesome. Thank you both. That's great words of wisdom for moving forward in space, and it seems like the team is in good hands with themselves. All right, Tahira, we're attempting the once unthinkable, but the team has prepared for this moment. Now to keep a steady course on this last mission-defining leg. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Samson. I mean, it is incredible what the teams are pulling off tonight. This is a first-of-its-kind mission, testing a way to one day save our planet from a hazardous asteroid. Now, we asked astronauts aboard the International Space Station to show us how this technique works in microgravity, and they had some fun with it. Now, before we get to the video, I urge you to keep a close eye on Shane. He's going to be in the blue shirt and standing in for asteroid Dimorphos. A white object is about to come crashing into him. That's our spacecraft. You'll notice how the impact of the crash moves Shane's position in space. This demo, much like DART's test, relies on the energy transfer from a collision to change the motion of an object. The method, which is called kinetic impact deflection, is the technique DART will test at 7:14 p.m. Eastern. Let's take a look.
So what I'll do, Shane's going to be the asteroid, and I'm going to be the NASA DART mission. Or this CTB, more exactly, is going to be the spacecraft. I'm going to try to throw it, and we'll look at the effect of that mass coming at him and the kinetic energy transfer from the CTB to Shane. Shane will be perfectly stable. It's not an easy task. You ready? All right, here it comes. I've redirected Shane successfully. Pretty good.
All right, now back on Earth, we're taking your questions live in just a few minutes. Send them in using the hashtag Planetary Defender and stand by. It's time now for our first status poll update. Let's head to Samson to check in on DART's progress. Samson, how are we looking?
Hey, Tahira. We are entering the 60-minute mark until impact, and as you noted, the team is about to conduct a poll, which is essentially a status update to check that key systems are in working order. We're talking Draco image quality, smart nav, guidance and navigation, ground systems performance, everything that's anything to do with getting us to impact. All right, I think the poll is about to get underway. Let's start to listen in. We are waiting for that poll to begin any second now.
Smart nav on off console.
Waiting on that first poll of the evening. There will be two polls, one at 60 minutes, which is now, and one at 30 minutes. Afterward, we should be hearing from Elena Adams, the mission systems engineer, to give us a summary of what we'll have just heard.
All right, folks, we're an hour prior to impact. Woohoo! And we're seeing Dimorphos, so wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's do our poll. Image quality? Let's start with you.
Images are looking great. Dimorphos is coming in at about the same relative dimness as Didymos. So very consistent brightness between the two. And it's a stable track.
That's awesome. All right, SmartNav?
SmartNav is looking good. We're sitting at about 30 meters of projected miss distance. There is no movement right now on the bars for doing a maneuver, but we do expect that when we transition in about 10 minutes that we'll see a maneuver at that point.
Yeah, that's great. And at this point, because we have a stable track, we do expect to transition over at that
correct.
time. So that's really good. Whew, that's good. All right, GNC.
GNC is nominal. We're ready to burn.
That sounds good too. And maneuver. All right. Let's see. Autonomy.
Autonomy is nominal. Heaters are cycling and no more fault rules.
All right. DSN.
DSN looks good, and we don't see any sign of rain. And ESA looks good as well.
That's good. And then ground system.
Ground system is nominal, and we have a clear vision of Dimorphos on the image display now.
Yes, it looks great. Thank you, guys. All right, one more poll after this, but in the meantime, we're going to hopefully transition at 50 minutes to locking. So stand by.
All right, we're going to hear from Lena ourselves to give us a update. Hey, Lena. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. That sounded like a great poll. Any words about what we just heard?
Oh, we're very excited. We are starting to see Dimorphos for the first time. It is looking great. It is just about the same dimness as Didymos as we expected. And so we are getting ready to transition. We have a stable track at this point. It's about 7 pixels in size. And yeah, we're ready to go.
It's great news, Lena. Thanks so much. I'll let you get back to it.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a great update. Joining me in reacting to that bit of news is Angela Stickle, planetary geologist and a DART investigation team lead. Angela, you just heard the poll, you just heard Lena. Things seem like they're going really well. What are you feeling? What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm so excited. This is fantastic. We can see Dimorphos, and we're on our way.
Gosh. Basically, we just got to keep humming along, right?
Right.
It's awesome.
Heading in.
Gosh, well, let's quickly talk about the next major milestone that's ahead of us, locking on target with Dimorphos, which could happen as early as 10 or so minutes from now. Right now, SmartNav is still targeting Didymos, right? But locking onto Dimorphos means, all right, Dimorphos, you are bright. You are consistently bright enough. I'm ready to start targeting you. Can you dive into what that means a little bit more?
Yeah, exactly. So SmartNav is looking for bright parts of the image. And so as Dimorphos gets closer and it's brighter and bigger, SmartNav will just target onto it as opposed to Didymos, and we'll be on our way to impact.
That is awesome. Thank you, Angela. That's very cool stuff. Good luck with the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Great. And while we wait, we want to invite you to celebrate the life of an important member of our DART team. Pulling off extraordinary events requires extraordinary people. And Ray Harvey was just that. A leader, an engineer, a friend. Ray devoted his life to making the impossible possible. Tonight, we pay tribute to DART's former mission operations manager.
Ray Harvey was our mission operations manager for DART, but I've known Ray since I've been at the lab, which is about 14 years. As a young engineer, having people like Ray was actually extremely important because you could go ask Ray a question. He would tell you a joke, but he would also give you an answer, so you didn't feel awkward asking questions. You would just feel good coming out with more knowledge, but also you had fun in the process.
I've known Ray probably since I started working here almost 25 years ago, and he was always like a good mentor and a sounding board for anything we were doing. I think everybody learned something from Ray, his leadership skills, how to treat people, how to work as a team.
Ray was a pretty amazing person. Even though he was fighting this terrible disease, He made it a point to be involved in all the rehearsals and all the activities going on DART. He led the mission operations team to the last few days of his life.
He was really hoping to make it to the end of this mission. He meant so much to this team and to getting us to this point.
It represents so many years of hard work of him and also the team, but him leading that team. And so the DART spacecraft is a tribute to Ray.
We are hoping that this experience kind of goes out to Ray and to his family. We will really miss him, and we already miss him.
Ray has touched so many lives. Even in the short time that I knew him, he was so generous with his knowledge, and he made you feel like you belonged. Ray, you'll be greatly missed. This one's for you. Tahira.
Thank you, Samson, for that beautiful dedication. Now, if you're just joining us, we're under an hour away from the DART spacecraft's head-on collision with asteroid Dimorphos. DART's mission is a test of a planetary defense technique that could one day save humanity. Rest assured, the test poses no threat to Earth. The spacecraft is almost 7 million miles away from us right now, and you're watching a live stream of its approach to Dimorphos. It takes about 45 seconds for the images you're seeing in the DART cam to make their way back to Earth. Any moment now, we should learn if DART is ready to commit to impact. While we wait, I'm here with Andy Rivkin, DART Science Investigation Lead, and Mallory D. Coster, DART Impact Modeler. Andy, Mallory, while we wait to learn if DART is ready to commit to Dimorphos, I can't help but wonder, why this asteroid?
That's a great question. The way that the Double Asteroid Redirection Test was designed, it was to measure the period change in a binary asteroid system. So we needed a binary asteroid, so that eliminates some number of objects. We needed something with a moon that was small enough that we could move it with a strike from a spacecraft, but not so small that we wrecked the moon. So when you kind of tick off all the possibilities, Didymos really ended up as the best choice and really the only choice that would provide a mission in this time period.
See, I want to go back to that. You mentioned having a moon that we could push but not destroy. Could you, now in pop culture a lot, we see that, you know, oftentimes the idea is to just totally try to demolish the asteroid. Why have we chosen to not test that technique this time?
Yeah, the conventional wisdom for planetary defense is that you don't want to disrupt an object and blow it into a zillion pieces, but you want to keep it intact and just move it all as one piece. Because if you move it all in one piece, then you can keep track of it a lot easier. If you blow it into a million pieces, then some of them might still Earth, and you don't want to miss a thing.
Yeah, we might have more issues then. So we know that we have the perfect test subject. Mallory, now can you help us understand how, if mission success, DART's mission tonight can help improve models for mitigating hazardous asteroids in the future?
That's exactly right. So we stand to learn a lot from this DART impact. DART is both a technology demonstration as well as a really big science experiment. So from a technology standpoint, we're going to see if we have what it takes to autonomously navigate a spacecraft into a relatively small celestial body, something the size of a football stadium, that's pretty far away from Earth. From a science perspective, we get to perform one of the largest and fastest impact experiments that man has done. Something that could never be accomplished in a laboratory here on Earth. So we're going to learn how these large sizes, these fast impact velocities, and also these sort of extraterrestrial asteroid materials respond to deflection.
Wow, I mean, there's so much about tonight that we don't know, and it seems like your fun is just getting started, right, until after impact. So Mallory, Andy, thank you so much. And tonight, ground-based telescopes aren't the only one watching the action. A small cube satellite built by the Italian Space Agency was deployed by DART 15 days ago and has been in the area to give us a bird's-eye view of impact. Here's more on Licia Cube.
Licia is a 6U CubeSat of the Italian Space Agency participating in the DART mission, and it's also the first Italian satellite operating in deep space. Licia Cube mission objectives is to support DART in the documentation of the impact effects, in particular in terms of the ejecta of materials that will be released from the asteroid surface after the impact, and also imaging the non-visible side of the asteroid during its flyby.
LICIACube will acquire images using its two different cameras, Leia, a panchromatic camera, and Luke, an RGB camera. Therefore, we can better understand the nature of the asteroid Dimorphos impacted by DART. By means of our Scientific Operations Center in SSTC ASI, we will distribute and process the images in order to make them available to the entire team.
We are here in Argotech's Mission Control Center in Turin, from where, together with ASI, we monitor the status of LICIACube. The batteries are charged, the radio is communicating correctly, and the navigation altitude is on the right trajectory. Everything is ready for the most important part of the DART mission, the impact with the asteroid.
DART is a global effort to prepare humanity for the unthinkable. Before the spacecraft can complete its mission, the autonomous navigation system must first confirm a lock on target. This is a key milestone that we should be hearing about soon. So let's go back to Samson for the latest from mission operations.
Hey, Tahira, we are less than 50 minutes out, and we just heard big news. We have reached the point where SmartNav is now target locked onto Dimorphos. That progress bar should move to your right that much further, closer to impact. Very exciting. In the meantime, joining me is someone who worked on the instrument, playing a starring role with this major milestone and basically all the way up to impact. Lisa Wu, mechanical engineer who helped install the Draco camera and built its cover. Lisa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So we just heard big news. We hit this target lock. It could have come fairly later than this,
yeah. But
we're in a good spot with this target.
Exactly.
How are you feeling?
I am so excited. I'm sure the entire team is ecstatic. This is what we've been working so hard for in these very last moments, and we just heard we got target lock, so could not be feeling any better.
Very exciting. I mean, we are humming along. So a quick recap, SmartNav is DART's autonomous navigation system. It's been called the brains of the spacecraft. And right now it's essentially maneuvering that spacecraft on its own, as it will be for the last 4 hours. But Draco Imager, it's providing SmartNav with that unflinching view of Dimorphos, about an image per second. It is the eyes of the spacecraft. Lisa, what makes this camera perfect for this mission?
Yeah, of course. So the Draco instrument is a very, very high resolution, narrow field of view telescope. The image quality, let's go back. Draco is a descendant of the Lori telescope, which might sound familiar because it took the very first pictures of Pluto on the New Horizons mission, which also might sound very familiar because that is an APL-led mission. So if you've ever seen the first pictures of Pluto, that is the amazing quality that we have on DART.
That's incredible heritage. And yeah, anyone who saw those images of Pluto, those were amazing, and that kind of ups the ante for what we're going to see with these pictures of Dimorphos, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we all know about, a lot of us have smartphones with, cameras. We have cracks, we have smudges. How did your team make sure that this camera made it in pristine condition to get to this point?
Of course. So our flight hardware, including this instrument, was made in the clean room. Very, very high clean facility. In order to make sure that the telescope works, we had to put it through a lot of electrical testing, optical testing, alignment testing. We had to make sure it performs as we intended. And then not only that, you have to take this instrument and put it through all the environments that it'll see through space. So we put it through vibration testing, thermal vacuum chamber testing, all to make sure that it performs and it will survive through space.
That's amazing. Test, 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 and test again, right?
Yes.
This is how we get to a stage like this. That is
exactly
awesome. That is great. Thanks so much, Lisa. The number of astounding technologies that are on board this spacecraft is amazing, but doing the impossible requires nothing less than the astounding, right? All right, Tahira, we have the technology. Clearly, we have the talent. Now we wait for history. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Samson. It feels good to know that we have locked on target Dimorphos. Now, earlier we asked you to send in your questions by using the hashtag Planetary Defender. And I am joined now by two real-life planetary defenders. We have Kelly Fast and Lucas Paganini, both from NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office. Let's dive into what you want to know. So, Kelly, Lucas, before I get to social media questions, we actually have a special question from a familiar face, especially if you're into football. So let's take a moment and hear from him.
What's up? I'm Joshua Dobbs, quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and I have a question for NASA's DART team. On the field, I have to use precision passing in order to get the football in the hands of my teammates, and at least I can see where they are. For NASA's DART team, how are you able to aim a spacecraft at an object so far away?
You know, that's a really good question, Kelly, and I mean, we haven't really done this before. How can we aim?
Right. Well, but I have to say, Joshua does in a few seconds what we've taken, years to do. Just as he has to throw it where he knows that the player will be, throw his football where the player will be. DART needs to end up where Didymos and Dimorphos will be, and so that was learned from astronomy, looking at it through telescopes, calculating the orbit, and then the people who launched DART to its destination navigated there. So there's just a lot more calculations involved, which Joshua does in his head. Yeah. And then there's this autonomous navigation. It would be like he had a football that could navigate itself. Yeah. And so we have that to lean on that he doesn't. And so that's what helps get to that destination.
All right. Nice. I mean, it's very impressive. And so we have another question from Jonathan on Facebook, who wants to know, how can a small satellite like DART be able to impact something as big and heavy as an asteroid and actually move it?
Right. And it's all about momentum, right? We have this tiny asteroid of about 160 meters, the size of a football field. And then you have this spacecraft, which is about 500 kilograms. So it's all about momentum, right? You have this massive asteroid and this tiny spacecraft, and how do you move it? It's all about mass and velocity. Since we don't have enough mass in that spacecraft, we have to really impact it hard, and that's why we're impacting it at 4 miles a second, which is outstanding.
Which is amazing. And I mean, we're actually going to get to watch impact live take place. And so that gets me to my next question. We have Metal Money on Twitter who asks, what is the size of the blast on the asteroid? Kelly, could you explain a little bit about that?
Well, and that's something that we're hoping to find out from this mission, because there's physics and calculations, but actually when you're dealing with a real asteroid that we haven't seen close up before, and what type of material might be on the surface, what the structure is, this is something that, like Lucia Cube, we hope to see as Lucia Cube flies by, to see what that blast was, how large it was, which will help those who are doing the modeling of how effective the impact was, and in changing the orbit, what all figures in, what Lucas just talked about, the mass and the velocity, but then also maybe that blast that is seen afterwards, the plume of material that we're hoping to see from Lucia Cube.
So how does tonight's mission play into the work that y'all do in NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, Lucas?
Yeah, I would start by saying that this is a very important test. We're going to know if this kinetic impact is an effective technique to use in the case that there would be any potential asteroid en route to Earth. So definitely, for me, that's the most important thing about this test.
But then on top of that, there's finding the asteroids, because you can't go out and mitigate a possible threat if you don't even know it's there. And so NASA is very focused also on finding near-Earth asteroids with telescopes that survey the skies every night, looking for near-Earth asteroids, getting the orbits calculated, figuring out where they're going to be in the future to see if we even need something by DART, and then working to speed that up. NASA's working on the Near-Earth Object Surveyor space telescope that would look in the infrared and have a different perspective, complement the ground-based telescopes to accelerate things, just so that we know, is there a threat out there that we're facing that we do not yet know about?
Wow, I mean, it's incredible just to know the work that is already being done. It's good to know that we're building off of it, but it's good to know we've already got some people watching the skies. Yeah. And so I have our next question from Alan on Twitter, who asks, how long does it take for pictures to reach Earth? Kelly?
Well, the time it takes light and then a radio signal from the spacecraft to come to Earth is 38 seconds. But then there's also the time needed to process the images, so a few more seconds on top of that. So under a minute, but still it's not instantaneous because it's a ways out there.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, but under a minute to get something back from space, I'd say we're doing pretty good right there.
That's right.
So, Lucas, Kelly, thank you so much for everything that y'all are doing to keep our planet safe.
Thanks, Tahira.
And so it's important to note that tonight we're attempting something that's never been done. And with that presents many challenges to overcome. Here's what makes DART a first-of-its-kind mission.
The DART mission is a very difficult mission because we are trying to do something that hasn't been done before.
This is the first time we're going to an asteroid that is this small, this dark, and we're actually going to attempt an impact.
The DART mission is really something that the whole world can get behind.
We're doing this mission to prove that we can deflect an asteroid if we find one that is on an impact course for Earth.
We are trying to hit an asteroid 163 meters wide, which is about the size of the Washington Monument, while flying at 6 kilometers per second, which is like going from New York to DC in about a minute.
There is no chance that this asteroid could ever hit Earth.
It's a very small asteroid. It's only about the size of a small football stadium, and it's almost 7 million miles away from the Earth. That's 28 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon.
There's kind of a limit on how much mass you can launch into space. You know, rockets are only so big. So our spacecraft is only the size of a golf cart.
Draco is the primary instrument on the DART spacecraft. It is the camera that is going to be imaging the Didymos system as we approach.
When we first see the asteroid through Draco, it's just going to look like a pixel.
There's a star tracker on board that takes images of the stars and compares them to a known catalog to determine which way it's pointing in space. It poses the biggest risk because very, very small errors in this measurement can spell the difference between success and failure. And those measurements are going to be fed into the SmartNav algorithm that's going to be making the autonomous course correction commands that will put us on an intercept course.
There is a very small probability that we don't hit the asteroid.
Even if we do everything right, our sensors work well, our spacecraft is doing well, we are looking, we're finding the asteroid, even then, we might still miss.
We're trying to teach a computer how to recognize an object we've never seen before.
And the way it does that is by taking pictures of the asteroid and then interpreting where it is in space and guiding itself to it.
The spacecraft is controlling itself. SmartNav is guiding the spacecraft. And we have very limited ability to respond in that time. So it has to do it all by itself.
And at about 2.5 minutes out, we cease all maneuvering and we coast until we hit the asteroid.
It is going very, very fast towards the asteroid, traveling at 6 kilometers per second.
200 times faster than a car on the freeway. So when we hit, all of that mass, all of that momentum pushes the asteroid.
Even giving it a small nudge will allow it to change its course.
But if we did see an asteroid on track for Earth, this would be enough of a deflection.
It's like a bittersweet moment. Yeah, all this hard work just got destroyed, but that was exactly why we put it all together.
Of all the endeavors that we do for space and in space, this is probably one of the ones that one day will be the most important thing that we've ever done.
In the future, I hope that DART can teach us what ways work and what ways don't work for planetary defense.
Because it is humankind's first demonstration that we have gained the knowledge and the technology to be able to protect the Earth from an asteroid impact.
Space exploration is rooted in pushing past boundaries. Remember, tonight is a test, and we hope to make impact. Now that you've learned of the challenges today's test, let's head back to mission operations and get a status update on DART's real-time progress. Samson, how are we looking?
Hey, Tahira, we have 30 minutes to go until impact. As we heard earlier, so far so good. SmartNav is now targeting Dimorphos. Thrusters are firing, maneuvering the spacecraft. Draco, DART's eye, playing paparazzi with Dimorphos, providing SmartNav with about an image per second. And this is a good time to remind you that what we're seeing on the Draco feed is delayed by about 45 seconds on account of signal delay and image processing. And coming up, we're about to see the team conduct a final poll, one last scheduled confab to make sure that all systems are go. And as we head to that, I have someone with me who knows a thing or two about ensuring spacecraft readiness and integrity. Betsy Congdon, DART's mechanical systems engineer. Betsy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
So you led the team that literally put DART together, is that right, Betsy?
Yeah, so my job is to make sure the engineers and the technicians all physically put all these boxes that you've been hearing, bolts and all onto a spacecraft altogether.
I gotta ask, with a mission so ambitious, how many hours, how many years, how many people? Do you have any idea at this point?
Oh, man. So, I mean, DART has been thought about for a long time, but really started in earnest about 5 years ago. We started building up the spacecraft and, in that assembly that I was talking about 2.5 years ago. And so it's been hundreds of hours, to make something like this possible. People with all sorts of talents. You've seen a lot of them today.
That's incredible. And so we're heading up toward another status update, as I said earlier. And as we all know, space is a unique and challenging environment. When you're assembling DART, what were the key boxes you were checking off of that very long quality assurance list to get the spacecraft to where it is right now and hopefully till impact?
So space is very hard, and so what we do is each individual component, Lisa was talking about this earlier, goes through its own individual testing, and then we put the whole spacecraft together, and we will check out the electrical systems, making sure all the boxes are working and talking to each other. We put it into a vacuum chamber, make sure it's going to work in space, put it through all the different temperatures it's going to see, and then put it on a shaker table and actually mimic launch. And so it actually goes through all of that as a full spacecraft as well as individual components. So we go through a lot of testing, mission operations, mission simulations to get to this point.
That's incredible. I mean, I don't know if you included, you mentioned so much, Ray. Is that also accounting for the temperature fluctuations in space? That's another key part.
Yeah, so we have chambers here at APL that are specially built to take these spacecraft, put them into the vacuum of space, and run them through the temperature spaces that we're going to actually see.
It's incredible. How many times do you check? Is it like one test and we're done, or are you sometimes testing and testing?
Lots and lots of testing, and that's what makes it, so perfect. We're seeing these great images coming in because of all that testing and all of that work. So, you don't do anything once. You're doing it many times because once it's in space, there's not a lot of ways to fix it.
Right. Well, do you ever, think about that one panel, that one component that gave you a little bit of heartburn in the clean room, and you're up at night thinking, I think that thing is going to hold true up until the end?
Everything is looking really good. I will say, we had a lot of new technologies, which were really exciting. The ROSA solar arrays had never been integrated onto a spacecraft before. And so that was like a challenge, but one the team was up for, and now it's all ready and working perfectly.
All these new technology demonstrations, it only adds to the complexity of this mission and to, testing things, I wouldn't say even more so, but it's just as critical. But new technology, everything has to be so to make sure it comes.
Yeah, all of this new technology just requires extra testing, but that just gains confidence. You're seeing the team working through that, working through all these mission sims. So that's really what makes it exciting. You don't want to just do the same thing over and over. This is what makes APL a special place. We build these special spacecraft that, have never been done before.
A last quick question for you. It's got to be a little bittersweet that a spacecraft you poured heart and soul into is about to careen into an asteroid. How are you feeling about that?
I'm feeling great about it. It was designed to careen into the asteroid. It's meeting its destiny. So it's really exciting to see, and I can't wait for impact.
Well, it is serving a purpose. I guess that's why it's easier to let it go. Right?
Exactly, very much so.
That is awesome. Well, I think we are about to get into that final poll in the mock very shortly. So we're going to hear that final 30-minute poll, and then we're going to hear from Lena Adams again, DART's mission systems engineer, to give us that summary of what we just heard, how she's feeling, how they're feeling in there. Very exciting stuff. This will be the final poll of the evening. we are awaiting that final poll.
This is Dart MSC on DT Mach. It is time for the last status poll. Yes. We're about, 7,000 miles from Dimorphos at this point, so yay. All right, image quality. How are we doing?
Still looking very good. Dimorphos still tracking along that same brightness predict as Didymos.
That's great. All right.
Maneuver complete.
Yes, thank you. All right. SmartNav.
SmartNav is looking nominal. We are at under 30 meters of projected miss distance right now.
Yeah, it's looking really good. Look at that. That's looking fantastic. Very excited. All right, GNC.
Yeah, GNC also looking good. We've been very excited to do those burns, so we've been waiting a long time.
Oh, this is great. Autonomy.
Autonomy is green. The heaters are cycling nominally, and we've had no new fault rules firing.
Okay, wonderful. DSN.
DSN is green, and ESA is green. Got plenty of margin. Looks good.
All right, ground systems.
Ground system has been helping a few users manage clients, but everything is going fine there, and we are green.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, guys. Completes the poll. Last one. All right, so Didymos is looking like itself. We'll see what Dimorphos is looking like soon. In the meantime, we're going to transition to precision lock at 20 minutes. That's our next milestone. So thanks all.
All right, we're about to hear from Lena Adams from the Mission Operations Center.
Hi, Samson.
Hi, Lena. That sounded very positive. How's it going in there?
Oh, it's going great. It's going great. We've locked on Dimorphos. We're maneuvering towards it, and yeah, everything is looking really good. We were at the time of the poll within just a few meters of projected miss distance, which means we were hitting towards the center. And at this point, we're coming back there about 30 meters off the center of the lit portion of Dimorphos as of right now. We've executed 2 burns, and everything's looking on track.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, Lena. Thanks so much for that, and good luck on the final stretch.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, Betsy. We had that very positive poll, lots of fantastics, lots of clapping. We heard Lena in a very positive mood. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's amazing to see the actual dots on the screen for real coming down from the spacecraft.
Very exciting. Any words of encouragement for the team?
I mean, obviously they're doing a great job. They practiced a ton, and we're ready. Go Dart.
You've heard it all loud and clear, Tahira. All systems are going. We remain on track for impact. And like Betsy just said, go Dart. Back to you.
All right. What an exciting update, Samson. You just heard it. All systems are go. Mission operations confirm the spacecraft is on track for impact. But in order to hit the mark, the test must first locate its target. That's why Johns Hopkins APL engineer Michelle Chen helped develop new autonomous navigation techniques that will ensure a bullseye. Let's take a look.
Never in my life would I have thought I would take a couple $100 million spacecraft and crash it into an asteroid. My name is Michelle Chen, and I lead the team that is responsible for the autonomous navigation of DART spacecraft to hit an asteroid. The DART mission is the first planetary defense test mission. Our goal is to hit and impact an asteroid to understand and study the momentum transfer so that we could potentially later down the road, if we need to, deflect an asteroid on its way to Earth. I'm the SmartNav lead. SmartNav stands for Small Body Maneuvering, Autonomous Real-Time Navigation. SmartNav, I always consider it sort of like the brains And so the camera, Draco, is essentially the eyes. The algorithm has to identify and hit the target in the field of view of the camera. We're flying at over 6 kilometers a second. It essentially occupies a pixel up until possibly 30 minutes prior to impact, and then that's where everything gets really exciting. And so you could just imagine if it was a human being joysticking this. Because we don't know for sure what the asteroids look like, our simulation gives us the capability to use different asteroid shapes and asteroid objects to see that our SmartNav algorithm performs against all these unknowns. We're super excited and nervous as well. I love pushing the boundaries, and I love the application of math into real-world problems, and then seeing it actually doing its thing. To me, there's nothing cooler than that.
If you're just joining us, we're about 24 minutes away from DART's impact with asteroid Dimorphos. The spacecraft is flying at 4 miles per second, guided only by its autonomous navigation system. I'm here now with Tom Statler, DART program scientist, and Don Graninger, DART impact modeler. Tom, Don, thank you for being here with us tonight. We have some good news happening, but we did just hear about the challenges that DART is facing tonight. So, Don, could you tell us a little bit about what kind of uncertainty exists with a mission like this?
Yeah, sure. So what's really interesting is that until just, even a few minutes ago, I feel like we're just getting our first looks at Dimorphos. And so we have absolutely no idea what we're going to be impacting into. It could be covered in rubble pile. It could be just a completely different shape. We don't know until we really write upon that impact. And that's probably one of our biggest uncertainties on this.
I mean, but that's what really makes tonight so exciting. And so, Tom, could you expand a little bit more on how we will use this information in the future if all goes successfully?
Well, this test is really important to understand how we might be able to deflect asteroids in the future. And when we measure the change in the binary period of Dimorphos, and we will understand how the asteroid reacted to our kinetic impact. And then as we get deeper understanding into exactly what the geology was of that asteroid, that's the basic information that's going to help us refine our physics understanding of asteroids and our ability to compute and predict, like Don does, run these fantastic codes and extend this knowledge to really have a good plan for how we might react if we ever do discover a dangerous asteroid that is different from Dimorphos.
Well, hey, I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry. So it sounds like y'all's party is really just getting started after impact. So congratulations on your success so far. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Now, any second, we should be learning if DART has a precision lock on its target Dimorphos. This is a key milestone critical to tonight's success. Samson, mission operations must be buzzing. How are things going?
Hey, Tahira. The energy is indeed electric, and the team is hyper-focused. You could hear a pin drop right now as we're coming up on the critical 20-minute mark from impact and expecting to hear from the team that SmartNav is now precision-locked onto Dimorphos, which means that SmartNav will be tracking only Dimorphos from here on out. Why? SmartNav has full confidence that we're in fact tracking Dimorphos, and so we want to remove any confusion by continuing to track Didymos. Because what could happen with Didymos is that its shape could be such that there's a lot of shadowing, which could make it seem in the Draco imagery like multiple blobs, as the team likes to call them. And we don't want SmartNav to mistake any of those blobs for Dimorphos, so we're doing away with tracking Didymos altogether. We are waiting for that announcement of precision lock. All right, we're about to hear from the team. Actually, we have some time until we hear that. And now let's listen in for that confirmation of precision lock.
All right, we expect to be in precision lock soon.
We are waiting for confirmation of precision lock.
MSC, this is SN5.
Go ahead, SN5.
We are precision locked and still tracking Dimorphos.
Yes.
We are soon going to hear again from Elena Adams.
This is great. This is DART MSC on DT-MACH. So this was our last milestone. At this point, we're going to be working towards Dimorphos. I expect we're going to do some burns. We're about 4,500 miles away from Didymos and Dimorphos. So let's see what happens.
Ground staff 41, FC2.
Right, joining me now to react to that bit of good news is Lindley Johnson, NASA's Planetary Defense Officer. Lindley, you heard Lena, we are now precision locked, a lot of applause, things are looking good. And we are now headed for the moment of truth. How are you holding up?
Oh, I'm doing great. You know, the team's been doing great. The spacecraft's doing great. This precision lock, you know, is absolute milestone for the terminal phase here. We've got a good signature on Dimorphos, so the spacecraft has what it needs to guide itself in for the impact here in 17, almost 18 minutes. So we're doing great.
Yep, so close. Very exciting moments ahead. Now, we can't say this enough, and I know you've said it so many times, but it's worth repeating for viewers that Dimorphos is not a threat to Earth, nor will it be after impact, right?
No, that's right. This asteroid system is still almost 7 million miles away from the Earth. It's at its closest point in the orbit right now to Earth. So from this point forward, it's going to be moving away from Earth. So there's no chance of anything here. We've got to look for all the other unknown asteroids out there still to find what the hazard really is.
Thanks so much, Lindley. I'll catch you on the other side of impact.
Okay, if you can.
Back to you, Tahira.
All right, thanks, Samson. It is amazing to know that we have a precision lock on target Dimorphos. Now, we have a fun way for you to join our mission, and it is by signing up to be a planetary defender. Visit bity.com/planetary defender. Take the quiz and receive a certificate like this one. Now, once it's official, show us on social media using the hashtag Planetary Defender. Now, telescopes from around the world are observing tonight's impact to ensure that how successful we are at changing the asteroid's orbit. They'll be measuring this success. And you may be wondering, how does that happen? Let's go behind the scenes with astronomer Nick Moskovitz at Lowell Observatory, home to the telescope that discovered Pluto, to see what's in store for DART.
This is Lowell Observatory. Lowell is one of many observatories around the world that will be observing the DART impact, NASA's first ever planetary defense test mission, to see how much a spacecraft impact can deflect an asteroid in its orbit. This is where Pluto was discovered, and we are still doing research in all areas of astronomy today. So let's go check it out. This is the Pluto telescope, the telescope that was used to discover Pluto almost 100 years ago. So here we are at the Clark Telescope. This is where Percival Lowell sat to observe Mars. Let's head on over to the Lowell Discovery Telescope, about an hour south of Flagstaff, which is where we are going to be collecting data for the DART mission. And the reason we're all the way out here in the middle of this forest is that we have really dark skies here. And this is the Lowell Discovery Telescope. This is what a 4.3 meter telescope looks like. This is what we will be using to study Didymos and Dimorphos in the days and weeks after DART impact. The DART spacecraft will be hitting an asteroid called Dimorphos. So special because it's a binary asteroid, which means a satellite around a larger asteroid called Didymos. And DART will actually be hitting Dimorphos. And what we will be measuring is how much
DART changes the orbit of Dimorphos around Didymos. So this is an important test for planetary defense mitigation strategies in case we ever have to do this for real. The Lowell Discovery Telescope is one of many telescopes around the world which will be used to study Didymos and Dimorphos. It's really a global coordinated effort. And what we're looking at here is a large 4.3-meter primary mirror that's in the middle of the telescope tube here. Up at the top is a secondary mirror. The secondary mirror up top there is what is focusing the light down onto the instruments and allows us to take images with the camera that's located down at the bottom. This is maybe one of my favorite hidden rooms at the telescope. We're like standing inside the telescope, the camera. Underneath the telescope, 100 tons above your head. Held up by this and this, which is cool. It's sort of, as you can see, the highest peak around here, just over 8,000 feet. Come up here for sunset. It's, you know, sun setting right there. It's perfect. For DART, we're going to be collecting images of the night sky. Typically, an observer would be here in front of one of these consoles, controlling the instrument and taking images like these as they're coming in off the telescope. DART is really a sort of before and after experiment. We need to understand the system before the spacecraft intentionally impacts, and then we have to understand what the outcome of that impact event is. As we watch from the Earth, Dimorphos will pass in front of Didymos and behind Didymos. What we will be doing with those images is measuring the brightness of Didymos in those images and looking at how that brightness changes. And those dips in brightness allow us to measure when these eclipses happen and measure the orbit period of Dimorphos. And so you have essentially a fixed star field here. All the white dots are stars of different brightness. And moving through this field is Didymos and Dimorphos, which again, we can't distinguish them as discrete points of light, but we have that small object moving through the field of view. So after impact, we will then be able to go back and start observing intensely, looking for those mutual events, those eclipse events of Dimorphos passing in front of and behind Didymos. And on each one of these frames, we're measuring the brightness to assess whether or not it's undergoing one of these events where Dimorphos is passing in front of or behind, and using those to determine the orbit period of Dimorphos around Didymos. This is such a cool experiment. It's such a singular experiment. Using the ground-based telescopes like this one and others around the world to watch the system and see how it's affected by this impact event, because that's really what's going to give us the answer to what did DART do at the time of impact. And that will be exciting to see how that evolves over the days and weeks following that impact.
All right, after a 10-month, 470 million mile journey, DART is just minutes away from making history. A truly global effort, this mission has brought together people from around the world, united under one goal: to find a way to protect humanity from a hazardous asteroid if one were ever discovered. Now, usually NASA spacecraft are intended to operate for many years or even decades, but not DART. DART was built to be destroyed. DART is a mission of firsts, proving that a spacecraft can autonomously seek, find, and approach a target in space that's so far away we don't even know what it looks like. It also marks the first time humanity will have moved a planetary body in the universe. I said that correctly. Now, at this point, the spacecraft is controlling itself, making small maneuvers to ensure it's lined up with its target. DART is speeding through space and will cover the last 4 miles of its journey in just 1 second. Coming up, we'll hear the final updates from mission operators and witness the big moment live from space. Samson, you have the best seat in the house. How are we looking?
You're right, Tahira. Front row tickets to the biggest event in town, and things are looking good. We are T-minus 10 minutes to impact, and DART is precision locked onto Dimorphos and zooming down the home stretch. Now, we have a lot to cover in the time we have left, and I'm thrilled to have with me Lori Glaze, Director of NASA's Planetary Science Division, with me for the ride. Lori, such a pleasure to have you.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here and really happy that we are here in this final 10 minutes. We are almost there.
Well, you were just in the thick of it with the team up until a few minutes ago. What is the atmosphere like in there? I can only imagine.
It's really, it's great. I mean, they're excited. Every time there's a marker that we meet a milestone, everyone is cheering and very excited. But there's also almost a sense of a calm confidence that with every milestone, everything's going, as planned. We're found and we locked on the target as planned, pretty much at the right time. They're looking at the brightness and the reflectivity of the object, and it's more or less what they expected. Everything is performing as expected, and so there's a lot of cheering and happiness, but just kind of a sense, hey, we've been planning for this a long time, and we've got it.
We've got this. We've been planning for this. We can hear applause left and right throughout this evening, all good signs. What are they focused on at this critical juncture, Lori? It is basically years of planning, 10 months of making sure we get to this point after launch, and they've been juggling a lot. Is there anything in particular that they are glued on as we enter this moment of truth?
Yeah, so the main thing they've been watching is getting to that point where we could do the precision lock, where we had good enough signal coming back and enough confidence in where we are relative to Dimorphos that we could really do that precision lock onto the target. And it's hands off now, right? We're not, the spacecraft is going to drive itself, and really focused on that, that point where they could be precision locked. And they're also thinking about looking at and reassessing continuously what's the probability of miss, right? As you get closer and closer, that probability should get smaller and smaller, and it is. It looks really, really good right now.
Well, it sounds like the game of thinking, of wondering, really doesn't end until that last second comes to pass. So they can do a lot of great up until this point. We just have to see this through to these last few minutes. Well, and in a few minutes, speaking of that, all the years of thinking, of doing, planning, reacting is finally coming to an end. From 5 minutes to impact, there will be no more opportunity to send any commands to SmartNav in the Mission Operations Center. The team will be purely spectators, the data coming in, and they are just wetting it out like the rest of us for the first time. Lori, this is huge both from an operational perspective and also an emotional one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can imagine, I'm really excited about it, and I've been engaged with this mission for, the last 4.5 years that I've been in my current role. But this team has been working so hard on this for so many years, and they've put so much of their energy and their time into this, and so much planning and rehearsing, and it's a really big event for them to, like you say, just counting down and watching. At this point, there's not much else they can do but watch and see the fruits of all their work.
Yeah, I've gotten to know many members of this team over the past few months, and there's a lot of alpha individuals on there, right? You need a good mix of alpha people to make sure we get to this point. I can only imagine what they're feeling. Perhaps, like you said, a little bit of relief, a little bit of, can I let this go? I have worked for this moment so long, and now we can no longer do anything. That moment is just coming up.
Yeah, but I think they're ready. I think they're at that point. You're getting some shots of Elena Adams, the systems engineer, and you can see the excitement in her voice. She's so ready to show the success of this mission.
This is awesome. 5 minutes out, which we're coming up on now. The team will be hands off 2.5 minutes from impact. SmartNav, which has been guiding the spacecraft autonomously for 4 hours, will also step away, stop any maneuvers. DART will simply be coasting to its fate. This is blockbuster stuff, Lori.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We are there. Yeah.
I have front row tickets, and we are very soon about to open up these airwaves in the Mission Operations Center. We'll stay plugged in all the way through impact. Remember, at this point, 5 minutes out, no more commands to SmartNav will be possible. The team is watching it just like you and me and the rest of us. All right, we've reached 5 minutes from impact. The final command opportunity to SmartNav has passed, and the team is simply watching that data stream in just like we are. Also remember, there is a 38-second lag for the data to travel to Earth, and also an additional few more seconds for image processing. It's important to note that. should be hearing the chatter in the Mission Operations Center momentarily.
This is DART MSC on DT-MOG. 5 minutes till impact. 5 minutes till impact. We are at 1,100 miles away. Also, our window for sending any commands to the spacecraft is done. Contingency's done.
This is a great vibe in that Mission Operations Center right now, Lori.
It really is. They are so excited. And I'm honing in looking at these images as we get closer and closer, and you look at Didymos and just you're starting to see this physical body appear there. It's incredible. Just incredible.
Great.
I'm still having a hard time believing this is real imagery coming in near real time.
Yeah, but you've been watching it over the last 30, 45 minutes go from just being a collection of individual pixels, and now you can actually see the shape and the shading and texture of Didymos, and we're going to see that same thing with Dimorphos as we get closer and closer. This is so cool.
Never before seen images of Dimorphos will come into stark relief.
Absolutely.
A few seconds before impact.
Didymos is amazing. All right.
The team is standing just recognizing this moment years in the making. It is really nice to see them relax a little bit, get off from those computers that they've been glued to, and just appreciate this moment that's coming.
Yeah, and they've earned this. It's just great to see them there. This is so cool.
Lori, we hit another major milestone. We are now 2.5 minutes from impact, and SmartNav has stopped maneuvering the spacecraft. DART is now coasting toward Dimorphos, and we hope into the history books.
Absolutely. This will be, I'm sure you've heard it many times tonight, humanity's first ever attempt at trying to move another celestial body, and also our first attempt ever to execute a mission in sole purpose of planetary defense. So what an exciting time. Yeah, and I'm starting to see Dimorphos start to come into view there. You can see it starting to take shape. I'm starting to see individual boulders on Didymos. Unbelievable clarity of images there.
We're coasting on in. Our projected missed distance is going to be about 17 meters.
All right.
All eyes on this event. Space telescopes, ground telescopes from every continent on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. 2 minutes out.
Does not look like one single rock to me.
Oh, boy, we're getting close.
14,000 miles per hour, Lori.
14,000 miles per hour. And remember, 45 minutes ago, 55 minutes ago, we couldn't even resolve this object in space. And now you can see us zeroing in right on target.
And we're now dropping the clock, and we'll go by loss of signal to confirm impact.
Right. Yes. Imagine we'll get that loss of signal, and then we'll hear from Lena Adams again, letting us know that we've been successful.
I feel like that'll be a crystal clear signal.
I think so. I think we're starting to see more resolution. In fact, look at that. Didymos has even gone out of the view. We're now just seeing Dimorphos.
This is remarkable stuff.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
Looks like control system's settling down. Angular rates look really good. I think we're going to get the investigation team some good pictures.
Wow.
No, come on, we can do better than that.
Yep. Starting to see those individual boulders there. You can see shadows of the various rocks on the surface.
It's amazing, guys. Oh my goodness, look at that. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Looks to me like we're headed straight in. Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. 8,
Yeah.
7,
Oh,
6,
wow.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow.
Awaiting visual confirmation.
All right. Let's see. We got it?
Waiting.
Waiting.
And we have impact. A giant leap for humanity in the name of planetary defense.
Woo. Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Oh.
What a moment. Very few words can really capture this moment. This is beautiful to watch. Amazing.
What a team. What a team and what an accomplishment.
Team. A few weeks ago, they had their last dress rehearsal. They were getting emotional at the dress rehearsal, and they're like, this is crazy. We're getting emotional. This is not the real thing. I can only imagine what they are feeling right now.
Yes. Well, you can see them there on screen. They're all pretty excited. Wow.
Hearing impact, the curtains close on Draco feed. That raw joy from the team, years of hard work and the weight of expectation lifted off their shoulders. This is amazing. This is beautiful. And Lori, really, this is a huge moment for the mission. Lots more work needs to happen in the days, weeks, months.
Absolutely. Now, as I always say, it's one of my favorite missions. Now is when the science starts. It just starts now. Now that we've impacted, now we're going to see for real how effective we were. We're going to train all of those ground-based telescopes on the Didymos Dimorphos system, and we're going to make measurements that will help us determine just what its orbit looks like now relative to what it was before. So it's going to be great. Very cool.
All right, this is when science, engineering, and a great purpose, planetary defense, come together, and it makes a magical moment like this.
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely. And you can see so many people there that have made this happen. The team of APL engineers that have really poured their souls into this mission.
Lori, any last words to mark this historic moment?
Oh, we're embarking on a new era of humankind, an era in which we potentially have the capability to protect ourselves from something like a dangerous, hazardous asteroid impact. What an amazing thing. We've never had that capability before.
Thank you so much, Lori. Those are poignant last words. Tahira, history has been made. Back to you.
Wow. I mean, what an exciting day for the DART team. And in case you're keeping score, humanity 1, asteroids 0. Now, I'm here with Nancy Chabot, DART coordination lead. Nancy, talk about a moment to catch on camera. What is going through your head right now?
I mean, I'm just thinking, wow, that was amazing, wasn't it? I mean, those images, you just got closer and closer, and sort of we've been planning for this moment. We've been talking about it for years. At APL here, we've been working on this since 2015, and I knew, I've been talking, these are the images that we're going to see, and they're going to be spectacular. And I think even then they exceeded my expectations of just zooming in like that, and it really is just such the team accomplishment, and to get to this moment over so many years. And I don't have to talk about it as coming anymore. It's happened now. We have done this.
It's happened, and it is just incredible that as humans, we have done this. We did this. And Nancy, do you have anything you'd like to say to the teams who made tonight possible?
Oh, I mean, I don't need to say anything to the teams because I know everybody like me is really proud to be part of this, right? Proud of this thing that we've been working on for years, and even before 2015, internationally, people wanted to do this. People wanted to take this first test. And then we finally did. Partners across the United States. We have actually 28 countries represented on our investigation team of scientists, telescopes on all 7 continents, everybody doing their part to make this moment happen. I know I'm I'm really honored to be on this team, and I know other people on the team feel the same way.
As you should, Nancy. And I mean, there's a lot to celebrate here tonight. And so now that we have confirmed impact, can you let us know what's next for this mission?
Well, I mean, I think I'm still taking a moment here, because this is a big deal. And this was a really hard technology demonstration to hit a small asteroid we've never seen before and do it in such spectacular fashion. But I know other scientists on the team, like me, are already pointing at those images, being like, did you see that boulder? Did you see that smooth area? Did you see the shape? What does that mean? And Lychee Cube is like flying by right about now. They're close approach, like taking images, and they're storing them, and we'll get those in the next days. Telescopes here and in space are looking. They're looking at the brightening of the rock that's thrown off from that spectacular collision that we saw. And this is going to go on for weeks. And so there's still a lot of excitement to come, but nothing to take away from this moment.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. It looks like everybody is celebrating here in Mission Operations. I think I just saw Bill Nye there. And so it is a huge day for this team, but also for humanity. You know, Nancy, you mentioned earlier about some of the international collaborations. And could you give us an idea on kind of the scope of DART's mission, right? It's not just us in the United States that's focusing on this. So can you expand a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, planetary defense is really an international issue. We are all on this planet together, right? And I think it's been so great for this mission to really support and embrace that international cooperation for planetary defense, so that we can maximize what we learn. And this idea came about from international scientists talking to each other, working together, you know, in order to make this moment happen for NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, building the spacecraft here at APL. But really, scientists around the world are ready to study the, what did we do to Dimorphos? But more importantly, what does that mean for potentially applying this in the future? I mean, DART really is just the start. It's just the first planetary defense test mission. It was spectacular, and it's accomplished, and we'll figure out how effective it was. That's really what we're going to learn in the next weeks to come. All right, we hit this asteroid. Now, how effective was that at deflecting it, and what would that mean for using it?
Yeah, there's still so much to unpackage here. And so we have a special guest who is wondering, you know, more of what's next for this big mission. So let's hear from her now.
Hey everyone, I'm Danny Hansen, American Paralympic rower and hydro athlete. And first, I would like to congratulate the entire DART team on crossing the finish line. So congratulations. And with that, here's my question. Now that DART has impacted, how will you know if the spacecraft has actually changed the asteroid's orbit?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a double asteroid system. So all we've done here actually is change slightly how Dimorphos goes around Didymos, right? And the telescopes on the Earth have studied this for years. So we knew it used to be 11 hours and 55 minutes. What is it going to be now? And so the telescopes are going to measure that period change. And they're so good at this. They've done it for decades already to get us to that point. And they're going to work for the next weeks and make that measurement. And when we have it, we're going to be sure to share it with everybody to see how much we did deflect this asteroid with the DART collision.
Wow. Well, Nancy, I mean, it's time for you to celebrate. So congratulations on everything tonight, and go DART.
Oh, go DART. This was spectacular.
Yes. And so we have Samson standing by in Mission Operations with two very special guests. Let's hop over there and see what's going on.
Thanks, Tahira. I have the pleasure of introducing NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, who has a special message for us.
Hey, congratulations. Boy, the DART team, you really did this one very well. It's been a successful completion of the first part of the world's first planetary defense test. And there were years of hard work. There was a lot of innovation and creativity that went into this mission. And I believe it's going to teach us how one day to protect our own planet from an incoming asteroid. I really look forward to learning all about what's happening from the observatories so they can tell us about the changes in this asteroid's orbit. So thank you to this international team. We are showing that planetary defense is a global endeavor, and it is very possible to save our planet.
All right.
That was eloquently put, Administrator Nelson. Joining me right now are Deputy NASA Administrator Pam Melroy and APL Director Ralph Semmel. Thank you both for being with me. Pam, I'll start with you. How are you feeling having witnessed this historic event up close?
Oh, I was absolutely elated, especially as we saw the camera getting closer and just realizing all the science that we're going to learn. But the best part was seeing at the end that there was no question there was going to be an impact, and to see the team overjoyed with their success.
It's beautiful. What does this mean for NASA? What does this mean for planetary defense?
Well, NASA works for the benefit of humanity. So for us, it's the ultimate fulfillment of our mission to do something like this, a technology demonstration that, who knows, someday could save our home.
Very powerful. Thank you, Pam. Ralph, you were in that mock for the moment of impact. We've seen a lot of major milestones in APL's history in space. We're talking the first flyby of Pluto, the first mission to orbit Mercury, and now the first spacecraft to impact an asteroid. What was the moment like for you in there?
It was incredible to see how so many years of hard work and creativity resulted in a direct hit of Dimorphos was just an adrenaline rush. I'll add that I've been at the lab now for quite a few years, and I've been involved in a lot of missions and achievements, and never before have I been so excited to see a signal go away and an image to stop.
Ralph, I'm going to give you both a treat right now. We're going to play that replay of impact on our screens right now so we can enjoy it again. Ralph, what does this achievement mean for Johns Hopkins APL? Huge, right?
Oh, it is huge. And in fact, if you'll excuse the pun-like statement here, the impact on APL, as it was on Dimorphos, is immense. This is exactly the kind of mission that APL seeks to do, a never-before-done mission. I'd like to thank NASA for entrusting us with this mission, and I'd like to tell everyone how proud I am of the entire DART team and APL for this game-changing achievement.
Incredible. Thank you, Ralph. And we're watching that replay right now on our screens and just admiring that remarkable achievement once again.
They were just tiny blobs of light, and now they are real objects to us, which is amazing.
Never before seen up until today.
That is amazing. You know, it's just as good the second and third time.
There's that drop-off, knowing we made impact.
Fantastic.
Well, there you have it. A lot of pride here tonight, along with the promise of big things to come. And with a successful DART impact, that will do it for us today at the Mission Operations Center. Back to you, Tahira.
Amazing. I mean, today is a fantastic day. And DART is just the beginning of a global planetary defense effort. In 2024, the European Space Agency's Hera mission will conduct follow-up observations of asteroid Dimorphos and measure in great detail DART's kinetic impactor tests. Let's take a look.
The DART impact is going to be an incredible moment, something we've been looking for over 17 years. My name is Jan Carnelli, and I'm leading the Hera mission for the European Space Agency. The deflection by DART will be measurable from ground with telescopes. However, only with Hera coming up close and inspecting the asteroid will unveil all of those parameters that will allow us to plan for a deflection mission if one day we need one. This is the propulsion module of the Hera spacecraft that will take us to asteroid Dimorphos and will allow us to study the results of the DART impact. The propulsion module is being built here in Italy and then will be sent to Germany, where will be mated with the instruments and the rest of the spacecraft to be ready for launch in October 2024.
We started designing and conceiving the whole mission and the spacecraft about 2 years ago, and we have a launch date to meet that is a fixed date in October 2024. So it's challenging, but we're making it possible. You could say that Hera is really 3 space missions in one. We have one, the main spacecraft that we are currently building at OHB in Germany, but we also have 2 smaller missions that are spacecraft in their own right. Those are the 2 CubeSats, Juventus and Milani.
The CubeSat I'm working on is Milani, which will perform spectral measurements and dust detection following the DART impact. My name is Margherita Cardi from Tevac International in Italy. We will work alongside the other CubeSat, Juventus, which will perform kind of an X-ray of the asteroid to understand the internal structure.
This is going to be the first time that we have CubeSats on board an ESA spacecraft. Once we arrive there, we will be deploying the CubeSats in order to complement ESA's scientific observations, taking more risk, but also trying to have higher rewards.
The CubeSats will be installed on 2 panels that will be mounted on each side of the structure of Hera. They are just the size of shoebox, however they contain complex technology which will really allow to bring added value to the Hera mission.
Hera and DART represent a fantastic international collaboration between NASA and ESA. The 2 missions complement each other and will validate an asteroid deflection technique that we could use in the future to protect planet Earth.
There you have it. Tonight, we've ushered in a new era in planetary defense. At 7:14 p.m. Eastern, the DART spacecraft targeted and collided with Dimorphos, showcasing a technique that we could use if a hazardous asteroid is ever on a collision course with Earth. Even though impact is over, the process of moving the asteroid is still going on as we speak. Over the next days and weeks, we'll be monitoring Dimorphos from all angles, tracking its change in orbit with ground-based observatories, studying the impact crater and ejected materials with space telescopes, and we may even get images from missions like Lucy, Hubble, and Webb. Now, don't miss a beat. For mission updates, follow Asteroid Watch on Twitter, NASA Solar System on Twitter and Facebook. Remember, impact was just the beginning. Science and images will be rolling in soon, so stay tuned to nasa.gov/DART. We'll be back at 8 p.m. with members of the team to capture reactions and celebrate this historic event. So join us soon on nasa.gov/live. And for more updates on Artemis and rollback operations happening tonight at the Kennedy Space Center, head to nasa.gov/Artemis-1. Thank you for watching NASA's coverage of DART Impact from Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory in Maryland. We want to give a special thanks to all of our guests for participating in today's broadcast, and a big shout out to my co-host Samson Rainey for keeping us keyed into the action. Go DART, and good night.